for Jonathan Taylor. There he goes again. 50, 40, down the far sideline. He might do it again. 10, 5, touchdown. I-N-D-Y.
The Eastern Conference Championship has been captured by the Indiana Pacers.
Alex Pillow wins the 109th Indianapolis 500.
This is the Fan Morning Show with KB, JB, and Jeff.
Good morning. KB out on vacation all week long. You've got James Boyd, myself, Jeff Rickard, along with Mark Dykton this morning. We've got some tickets to give away to go see the Indy 11 this weekend coming up a little bit later on today. We'll talk a little bit more football and our long, I don't know, you can call it national nightmare. Certainly an Indianapolis nightmare is over. Caitlin Clark returning to the floor a little bit later on today for the Indiana Fever, James.
Yes, and while by a little bit later today, you literally mean a little bit later today, they have a 12 p.m. tip-off against the Golden State Valkyrie, and I believe this is the camp day, so the annual game where they play pretty early. Every team in the league, I believe, does it. So expect a lot of kids on, I wouldn't call it a field trip because it's summer, but it's kind of got that feel for sure.
Yeah, and you're going to have to go by yourself. Of course, last night, right before we ended the business day, somebody called for meetings today at 1 o'clock and 1:30, so there you go.
Yeah, well,
I'll be doing that. So you'll be on your own to go see that today. I thought I was going to escape and get out of here, but it never works out that way. I don't know how that goes.
Hey, well, my job is to go to the game, so you got to change your perspectives a little bit.
So I'm looking forward to that. That'll happen a little bit later on today. And here's the question. They played really well at times defensively, and I thought they kind of took a page out of the Pacers playbook while Caitlin Clark was gone, and I think they always try to do this, but they were really great at sharing the ball, whipping it around a little bit. Does that chemistry, I know this sounds crazy to say, because, look, you're always going to be better with Caitlin Clark. I think we all understand that. But does it take a minute for everybody to kind of reintegrate again, or do they pick up because they practice so much together right where they left off?
Yeah, I think it'll take some time, and you got to see how she feels. I know when Stephanie White talked to the media yesterday, she was basically saying that they have to monitor her, and Caitlin has made it very clear that she's not the type for minutes restrictions and things like that. But I am curious to see how much they monitor her minutes and things of that nature just because she hasn't played in quite some time. But overall, still good news that she's expected to play, barring any setbacks. And so knock on some wood here and hope that she's able to get back out there.
Yeah, it's so funny. If the WNBA is not getting your attention, it soon will. I know, Mark, you are like me, and a couple of times a day in the morning and the evenings, I kind of check social media and go through it and see what's going on. And I saw a video yesterday, the practical joke that back when she was playing for the Las Vegas Aces, that the team played on Sydney Colson, who's just the sweetest, nicest person. So they played this joke on her where she kind of said something. She saw a teammate's, what she thought was the teammate's mom, and it was her big sister. And one of the other teammates heard that. So they made up this concoction that the other teammate was really offended, as was her sister, at being called older. So they called her into the office, and they had assistant coaches in there and Becky Hammond in there, and they were playing along with it. And this poor sweet girl was like, "What did I say? What did I do?" Then they finally let her off the hook and told her they were just kidding around. But you can do that with somebody who's nice and sweet.
When was this?
This is probably from last time she played for Las Vegas.
So so it's an old...
Yeah, that's an old clip.
Gotcha.
It showed up on my feed. But I thought, we don't really know these people, and some of them are wonderful people, and some of them are just assassin killer professional athletes, and some of them they're just people like the rest of us. I guess that's the point of the whole story.
Gotcha. All right, I was making sure.
It was kind of fun. No, nothing crazy that you're like, I know reporter James is over there going, did I miss something? What's going on here?
I was just wondering, like, when did this story even happen?
No, that's why I started it with back when she was with Las Vegas with the Aces at some point in time.
All right, I'm picking it up.
But I'm all about locker room hijinks and practical jokes. I think those are the best.
Yeah, I mean, usually
I think that's how
signs of a
teams
good
can
team,
come together, don't you think?
Yeah, for sure. But I'm excited for today. And I think the Golden State Valkyries are a pretty good team to be an expansion team. They have played pretty good basketball this year. And, again, I haven't done it to the degree that I will when we get later in the season, but the standings do matter. And I think after getting about a third of the way through the season, every game that Caitlin plays and really the team itself plays, we got to start really looking at where they are in the standings and things of that nature. So, like I said, excited to see her back in action today. I'm sure she's excited to get back out there. And yesterday, talked about a little football action. She, after practice, looks like she was throwing a football around and kind of got some fun in there. So it was funny to hear Stephanie White sort of updating the media on her status and how she might be and things like that. And then you see Caitlin running around the back like a little kid throwing a football around. And I was like, I think she's going to play tomorrow. So excited about that.
I'm sure she was excited too. And that's the other thing. I think I talked about this the other day. I enjoy seeing these athletes do other things. Like I told you about, I saw Sophie Cunningham throwing a football in some NFL Combine fan drills and things like that. And she was terrific. We all remember the Kelsey Plum video when she threw a T-shirt like into the upper deck with a motion that every quarterback would envy. And you see Caitlin Clark running around, and you go, "Oh yeah, she grew up with big brothers because she had to play ball with them." It's just fun to watch them be the athletes that they are.
Yeah. So for more on Caitlin Clark, the Fever, we'll be talking to Chloe Peterson from Indy Star later in the show at the 9 o'clock hour, and then we'll hear from Ben Steele, who is the Marquette men's basketball reporter who covers, obviously, Marquette, and he will tell us a lot more about Kam Jones, the Pacers' top rookie pick this year. So, stick around for the show. Should be a fun one today.
You had mentioned this a little bit yesterday, and I was reading The Athletic this morning. As I always do, I recommend that to everybody. It is my first read of the morning every day. And I happened to come across something that was a national piece where they had the beat reporters for each team say one contract to watch. And you had mentioned this a little bit yesterday, but we'll talk about it in more depth today. You had talked about the left tackle Ryman and what he's got coming up and kind of explained to people he's kind of outperformed his rookie contract. He's becoming a really solid tackle in the National Football League. And that's going to cost the Colts a little bit, but it's, when you get a left tackle, you pay for that, don't you?
Yeah, you have to. And I know we talked a lot about the quarterback, and we will talk even more about the quarterback and who is starting, who's not, all of those things as we get closer to the season. But who's protecting the quarterback is important as well. I think Mark can speak to that as the Bears fan, the resident Bears fan here. You get a lot of hype with Caleb Williams and all the other position, players and skill position players, and then you go out there and you can't block anybody, and life is miserable. So you don't want that to hinder your evaluation of Daniel Jones or Anthony Richardson, because I think, that would really be sort of a wrench in the plans, because if you're sitting up here talking about either one can't do anything because they're running for their life, that to me will be a kind of franchise malpractice.
Yeah, I'm just curious. I thought about something too, Mark. I was looking over some NFL stuff last night. If I told you that next year the Bears and Caleb Williams win the Super Bowl and they only lose 2 games, but they're swept by the Packers, would you take that season?
Yeah, because it's a Super Bowl, and then you can hang that over their head and say, wow, Caleb Williams has as many Super Bowls as Aaron Rodgers has. That's interesting to me.
I knew. He walked right in. I knew that's exactly where I would have put 20-1 odds on the fact for you, James, that Aaron Rodgers would be brought up in that conversation, even though Aaron Rodgers hasn't played there for a couple of years.
Packers suck.
I'm an all-time hater when it comes to that man.
The hate is consistent.
It's gonna be on his deathbed. He's gonna talk about a couple of things that he was proud of, and 1 or 2 regrets that he had, and he goes, "And I'm so glad Aaron Rodgers never won a Super Bowl."
Yeah,
that's gonna be you.
I know one thing we didn't really hit on when we spoke about Kevin Pritchard and his press conference the other day, kind of recapping the Pacers season. His conversation with Tyrese kind of gave me chills. This was before Game 7. And I know we talked a lot about the injury afterwards and Miles Turner, but the conversation that he had before Game 7 with Tyrese and him telling Tyrese, hey, I'm a little nervous. And Ty looks at him and basically says, why are you nervous? We're going to win this thing. And hearing him say, I truly believe we win Game 7 if he doesn't get hurt. And if woulda, coulda, shoulda, all those things are always, going to be questions that we have. But I think I might be on board with that because of the way Tyrese came out and played. I know we can't go all the way down memory lane, but just an interesting nugget from Kevin Pritchard where I felt like he, to me, sounded more like a fan than perhaps he ever had. Because at that point, when you're a GM or a team president and you build your roster, you get to a Game 7 in the finals, there is no more roster retooling. You know what I mean? Like, you got to sit there and watch the game like everybody else and see what happens. And I thought that was an interesting perspective to even hear from someone of that level to say, man, like, we were right there. And then in the same breath say, well, we got to start over again. And I'm like, wow. Like, and not start over meaning we have to rebuild completely, but we got to try to climb this mountain again. And I think that is why those players, those executives are wired a bit differently, because while we sit here and it's like, oh my gosh, every now and then I'll still think to myself every couple of days, be like, man, they were right there. They can't think like that because, Summer League, I believe, starts up for the Pacers here very soon, and then the draft happened like right after the NBA Finals, so there's no time to really feel sorry for yourself. You just kind of gotta, take some time, I guess, privately, but publicly, it is, moving on and moving forward.
I'm glad you said that because I know you have to be a little more removed from it because you do cover the team a lot as a journalist and things like that. Mark and I have been following the Pacers now for a long time, and I find myself even once or twice a day, even now, as far removed as we're getting from the NBA Finals, just, Mark, I don't know if you still have those moments in the day. It just, hits you. Like, I can't. First of all, I always think first just how awful it is for Tyrese Halliburton. That's the first thing I think of. And then my second thought is, can you imagine working your whole life to get to that moment, and you're in the moment, and you are cooking. You're on fire. And then it all just gets taken away from you. I just feel so bad for the kid a couple of times a day, and then I feel bad for the Pacers in general because I want this franchise and that group of people over there to succeed so badly. And it's been a couple weeks, coming up on a couple weeks, Mark, and still kind of once or twice a day, I'm like, ugh.
My thoughts are more, would Pacers fans rather have just lost in Game 6?
I think you always want a shot.
But knowing what we know now, that Tyrese Halliburton would tear his Achilles, would you rather just take the Game 6 loss?
Well, if you know you're going to lose
turn
both
the page
either
to this
way,
season.
Sure. If you know you're going to lose either way. But I thought it was also interesting what Kevin Pritchard talked about, too. If you didn't hear this, we were talking about it yesterday, when he said if he had it to do over again, of course he wouldn't want to play Tyrese again in Game 7. But they did check with doctors, and they were told there was a low probability that could happen. And they just saw him be effective in Game 6, even though he was struggling a little bit, and he'd had a day or two to rest. And you got Tyrese, obviously, pushing hard to play. I don't know that's a situation you can go back and just fix. I think it was what it was.
Yeah, it certainly is. And I know we got to hit a break here soon, but Kevin Durant, who he is the self-proclaimed Achilles guy, weighed in on the recovery and things of that nature. So maybe we'll play a little of that audio a little bit later so you all can kind of hear a perspective from someone who went through that injury and came back and kind of had some words of encouragement for people like Tyrese going through it.
All right, we got a lot to do today. A Fever Play at noon today. Fan pregame show starts at 11:45, and then, of course, they will be on the floor over there middle of the day. You're going to be over there, and you and probably about of the entire arena, about 14,000 kids under the age of 12?
Maybe. I know
Which
it's
is
going to be
I'm all for that.
Pretty loud, so it should be a fun day.
Ice cream on James Boyd. There, I said
Nah, I ain't got it like that. Ice cream on Caitlin Clark. I think she has
Meet
the funds.
James at the Steak and Shake, and he'll get a shake for everybody, right?
See, I wish. One day.
You do that and take all the crowds over there, and then I can just slyly sneak up to the Ben's Pretzels and not have to wait in a long line. So there we go. All right, coming up in a moment, we'll let you know everything that happened last night and what you need to know to start your day in the world of sports. But now let's pause on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Down on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
All right, the game in town today starts at noon over at the Field House. It'll be Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever taking on the Golden State Valkyries. And Caitlin Clark returning after missing several games with a groin injury. Earlier in the season, missing several games with a quad injury. I can't help but think that maybe those two were related. Either way, hopefully it's behind her after a very busy day in a public practice and practice yesterday. She is ready to go today.
Yeah, it should be an interesting sort of version of her to see how much she plays and how, I expect her to start, but minutes restrictions, things of that nature, or if they're just letting her go full bore.
Well, it'll be interesting to watch today, noon. By the way, I was looking it up. Do you know what a Valkyries is?
I do not. It sounds like something that would be in like Greek mythology.
You're close. You're very close. You want to take a shot at that, Mark?
Something that flies.
Yeah, I don't know.
Valkyries are figures in Norse mythology depicted as warrior women who serve the god Odin.
Oh, like Wonder Woman.
Yeah, there's Valkyries in Marvel Comics. I think there's Valkyrie as a character, I think.
Okay.
In Marvel Comics, too. So, yeah, the warrior women basically serving the god Odin.
I'd hang out at that island.
I always think of Will Ferrell when I hear the term Odin.
Okay. I think of Greg Oden. I'm not going to lie to you.
Different spelling, but that's okay. Anyway, that starts at noon today, 11:45. The Fan pregame show with Eddie Garrison right here at 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan. No real news to report for the Indianapolis Colts other than, James, they edge closer and closer to reporting for camp, which I believe will be the 22nd of this month, correct?
Yeah, I think report day is the 22nd, and then we get out there for actual practice on the 23rd. So we're literally, 2 weeks away from today. We'll be out there in Westfield and Grand Park under the hot sun, getting ready for what would be my fourth season covering the team, but also, more importantly than that, the third season of Anthony Richardson and where he's at as far as his throwing and things of that nature.
James has started ironing his bucket hat. He is ready to go.
Yeah, I gotta wash the bucket hat. The bucket hat's probably a little stale from last year, but I gotta get it right and get it going. And I also have my sunscreen, because that was essential. Didn't have it my first year, and I got peeled up.
We got to back up. You haven't washed the thing since last camp?
No, I've washed it. I'm saying I gotta wash it because it's been sitting around in the.
I just wanted to check and make sure. I thought maybe it was doing who knows what.
I feel like anything I haven't worn in a long time, I probably should wash it before I wear it again.
Get an extra layer of Downy on that thing.
There you go.
That's how that works. All right, Major League Baseball last night. The Cincinnati Reds, not going well over at the Great American Ballpark. They lose by 10 to the Miami Marlins. 12-2 was the final score there. Cardinals finally won a game. They beat the Washington Nationals by a score of 4-2. Minnesota also taking the clubs to the Chicago Cubs. 8-1 was the final score there. And maybe the most interesting thing that I saw last night in San Francisco, he had an inside-the-park home run. Just don't see those.
A walk-off.
A walk-off.
Inside the park.
I think it was a 3-run inside the park.
That was impressive. I was about to go to bed last night, and that popped up on my feed, and I watched. I was like, I don't know who this guy is on the Giants, but that was a hell of a finish.
Patrick Bailey helped the Giants beat the Phillies by a score of 4-3. And also, Mizraski, see this kid from Milwaukee? Gave up a home run to Shohei Ohtani last night, but he still just buzzed through the Dodgers lineup.
Yeah, the Brewers have me a little nervous. I mean, as a Cubs fan, we have a nice lead, but the Brewers make me a little nervous. They've got some good pitching, and they always just seem to be hanging around, and so Joel Erickson's squad, I'm a bit nervous, especially with Mizraski coming along.
Jacob Mizraski and JB, he had 12 strikeouts in 6 innings.
Pretty good work.
What they used to say on SportsCenter, Stuart Scott used to say, you don't have to go home, but you got to get on up out of here. Talking about the batters going down swinging. Later on tonight, the Indianapolis Indians will they also have a matinee. I shouldn't say later on tonight. It's a 1:35 start as they take on the Gwinnett Stripers. They beat Gwinnett last night over at Victory Field by a score of 8-1. So that's going on there. And I know a little bit later on, you saw some interesting stuff with Kevin Durant talking about what it takes to come back from an Achilles injury. And more than anything, it's just wrapping your mind around the fact that, man, it's going to be a while.
Yeah, and we'll certainly play the audio here probably on the other side of this break to kind of give you all his perspective on the recovery. And then also we do have a little bit of WNBA drama that we can get into with Caitlin Clark and the WNBA and the Fever, because it never lacks, right?
They're also in the Caitlin Clark and Nafish Collins both selected their teams for the All-Stars as captains last night. And there was, I'll tell you about it in a minute, there was one move made I've never seen happen before in the All-Star game, and I was here for it, JB. I see you smiling. You know exactly what I'm talking about, right?
Hinting at.
I think there's two things. Two things. I don't know if it's the same thing you're thinking about, but we'll talk about it next. It's 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
You're listening to the Fan Morning Show on Sports Radio 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
I got to do something this week to jump on you there, Mark. I got to get ahead of the game just once or twice this week.
Well, thankfully your mic wasn't on.
There we go.
You did false start.
I was ready to go.
We're back 5 yards.
I was
First
ready to
and
go.
15.
No, the referee didn't see it because it didn't happen.
Well, the coach, I saw something.
Well,
I saw the center lift his head up.
You can
Something
find me.
happened there.
You can find me after you go back and look at the film. But there were no flags thrown because it wasn't over the air. So, good morning, everyone. It's a fairly busy Wednesday morning for the summer out there. There was early this morning. There was a lot of traffic out there this morning. Everybody's up and early and out to get it today. Maybe people are going on vacation at midday or something. Got to get to work early, but it was pretty busy today. You don't have to deal with that because you're right around the corner.
I was going to say I live, very close, so it's pretty much the same drive as always. But yes, people were out and about, and honestly, we're back into the groove of working again. So I guess it's probably
Right.
Why it looks like that.
Maybe as Mark, what was it like for your driving? Did you pick up a little more traffic than normal or not?
I don't know if there's more traffic. My ETA definitely rose a little bit today, but I didn't notice any heavier traffic. But
Okay.
definitely saw some people with some luggage on their cars. I'm like, someone's driving. I've been there. That poor bastard driving in the middle of the night. Probably wants to pull over to a truck stop and sleep.
Let's load up the old family truckster and head out on vacation, James. I think everybody's got a couple of stories of heading out on vacation
Yeah,
with
that
the
was
car loaded up and things like that, right?
That was my childhood. I didn't fly much as a kid, and honestly, what I know about flying now and having TSA pre-check, it's like a different world than what I grew up in.
Totally different. We actually did, growing up in Colorado one summer, we did have a station wagon, and Dad put luggage rack on, and we had luggage on top, and we drove to Disneyland and back over the course of about 8 days.
I had someone's luggage snap off and hit my car.
Get out of
This
here.
was years ago.
Did it fly right into the windshield?
Right into the bumper, and yeah, it wrecked my car. And that was
Did they stop?
No, they kept going.
Did they even know? Did they even know what had happened?
Absolutely. I mean, if you look in the rearview one time, you'll see all of your clothes are, all over I-65, and that was like a Final Destination type of accident. That was crazy. But yeah, long story short, I got the car fixed, and they wrote down that it was like an act of God, basically like if a deer had run out onto the road.
Right.
So my insurance didn't go up. I got the car, fully fixed. But when the guy lifted it up, and I have the picture to prove it, when they went to tow it, because I couldn't drive it literally at all, there was a piece of underwear stuck in the bumper of my car. And I told the guy it was such a ridiculous day that I was like, I need to get a picture of this just for proof of it actually happening. So I think I win the award for weirdest car accident because, yeah, imagine going about 60, 65 miles an hour on I-65, and then, you get a luggage full of clothes hurling at your car. Very interesting setup there.
Only James Boyd. Only
Boyd.
me.
But yeah. I do know before we went to break, we're not talking about, undies under my car. We were talking about I
did not have that on my bingo card today either.
Yeah, but we definitely had some WNBA All-Star news I think you wanted to share. That was new. This was not something we've seen before.
Deliver the punchline. So Caitlin Clark and Nafisha Collins under the setup of this year's Nafisha Collier. I'm sorry. I'm trying to get ahead of myself. I apologize, Nafisha. But anyway, they're the two captains, and we saw them play. We saw Collier play not too long ago. She's terrific, obviously. Might be the best player in the league this year. But anyway, both of them are the team captains. They get to choose from the available roster of All-Stars who's going to be on their team. So they all do that, and I think we all expected that for, if nothing else, TV drama, Caitlin Clark did not choose Angel Reese, and they're going to be on competing teams. But I thought the most interesting thing, James, was what happened right as the draft got going. There was a trade made by the two players.
Yes, and the trade did not involve any players. It was the trading of coaches. And so Team Clark will now be coached by the Liberty's Sandy Brindello, and then the Team Collier will be coached by Cheryl Reeve. And the drama there is that Cheryl Reeve has had, a couple of moments in the last year or so where she kind of put her foot in her mouth about Caitlin Clark, and she was very outspoken about why Caitlin was not selected for Team USA and how the league should cover all of the players and not just Caitlin Clark. And so there might be a little, animosity there. But I think more than anything, it's probably the fact that, Cheryl Reeve is the Lynx head coach. So she will be coaching her player and Nafisha Collier as well as others.
Yeah, I just like the fact that they're going to trade coaches right out of the gate. Hey, this isn't going to work for us. We got to do something different here.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, looking at how it was kind of set up and the way Caitlin just did it, it was funny to hear her and Ephesia say, well, we don't know if it's in a WNBA rule. We're going to make it one. And I was like, you know what? What can the WNBA really say if you do decide to change coaches? Like, who's going to be up in arms about,
it's good for the game.
Rule 7, Article 2 says you have to keep your coaches? Like, no. So that was pretty cool. And I know, again, that was Caitlin Clark, GM Caitlin Clark, picking up her teammates. So all 3 Fever are on the same team as expected, and then we'll see from there, how things go. I do want to know, just real quick, as far as injury goes, Asia Wilson went down with a right wrist injury yesterday against the Liberty and did not come back to the game. So I wonder if that injury will linger at all and if they would have to go find an injury replacement, because I believe Asia Wilson is on Caitlin Clark's team for the All-Star game. So if that is the case, you want to make sure that obviously you get a player that can actually go out there and play.
By the way, Collier also offered a trade up if Caitlin would be willing to. She was going to trade straight up, I think, Brianna Stewart for Aaliyah Boston, and Caitlin was like, absolutely not. I like the fact that the first pick for her was her teammate.
Yeah. I mean, are you surprised at all?
No, that's how you do it.
Gotta do it.
That's how. Can you imagine if she'd waited? And her teammates just kept going.
That would be kind of funny, but no, you can't, for the optics, no, you can't do that one.
She said, I don't think Fee actually meant that, but that's the answer she was going to get. But more important to us, Caitlin Clark is going to be on the floor today for the first time in a while. It's been a while. It feels like it's been almost all season.
Yeah, I believe she's missed 5 straight games and 10 overall. Now, you keep in mind, I believe they played about 18, 19 games, so about half the season she has not been available for this team. So excited to see her back in action today, which is, very early for their schedule. I mean, she's going to be playing in less than 5 hours, which is kind of bizarre. And again, for those who might be unfamiliar, it is camp day, so expect a lot of kids at this game, a lot of high-pitched screaming and voices, and really a fun environment and a unique opportunity for some young fans to see the Fever. I believe they bus over, kids from different camps around the city, around the state. So it's one that I look forward to every year. It reminds you of your youth in a sense, and so it should be good. But overall, it's still an important game for the Fever because the Valkyries are playing good basketball. And just for the sake of Caitlin's, confidence, not that she lacks any, but you want to get out there and hopefully play well just to kind of remind yourself that, okay, the injury is behind me.
Yeah, Golden State is 9-9, as are the Indiana Fever. Golden State's won 6 of their last 10. Fever have gone 5-5 over the last 10. A lot of those games played without Caitlin Clark. And when you look at the standings, Indiana's sitting there in 7th. Golden State is 6th. And this is where part of the time, the part of the season where you got to start making your move, JB.
Yeah, certainly. And you can't keep saying it's early. It ain't that early anymore. So
you're 18 games into what, a 44-game schedule?
Yeah, so you're basically, not halfway there, but you're getting to that midway point of the season. You'll probably be there before the All-Star break. So excited about that.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun game to watch today. I know you're going to be over there, and I'm going to be probably watching it on TV when I can glance a shot up at the TV or not. When's the last time? I think we talked about this before, Mark. Your kids, are your daughters WNBA fans?
Oh, yeah. I mean, they know Caitlin Clark better than anyone. They see the commercials and everything like, oh, Caitlin Clark. So they just assume they assume she plays on the Pacers as well. During the Pacers game,
yeah,
they kept saying, "Where's Caitlin Clark?" I'm like, "Well, she's right there watching them." Like, "Well, when's she playing?" I'm like, "Well, not now." Although the Pacers probably could have, the Pacers could have drafted her and just hey, you want to double dip? You want to play in the building year round? Make that happen.
There we go.
Let's sell some tickets.
I was talking about this with somebody yesterday about just the impact of Caitlin Clark, and we start to really put into perspective how big her brand and I don't know if celebrity is the right word, but her impact is. I mean, you think about all the commercials that Peyton Manning does, right? And Caitlin Clark is now featured prominently in Nike commercials. She's featured prominently in Gatorade commercials, State Farm. I mean, she's right there with Patrick Mahomes and Peyton Manning when it comes to that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, this has been the case for the last few years, and it's not going to stop because she is the draw. And I know people can debate who's the best player in the WNBA. I believe it is Ephesia Collier, who plays for the Minnesota Lynx. But the biggest draw, the face of the league, face of the sport, is unequivocally Caitlin Clark. So that will be something that she has to sort of carry throughout the rest of her career. I think she's done a pretty good job of it. And for those who criticize it, and I can be in that group as well, sometimes I have to remind myself that I was not having to answer for everything all the time when I was 23, I believe. So that is something that I don't envy at all. But like I said, she carries it pretty good with grace and class. And when she plays, she gets fiery, and you're reminded that, yeah, all that nice, woman stuff is out of the window. She's a fiery competitor. And like I've told you all before, it reminds me of the way Kobe played and his demeanor was just how cutthroat she can be on the court. So that's, certainly something to keep an eye on. And I do want to see, again, how loose do they let her be with the minutes, with her play style and things like that. But, to kind of pivot away from the Fever a little bit, I know before the earlier break, I teased a Kevin Durant snippet when he was discussing, the injury recovery from an Achilles tear and things of that nature. So, Mark, if you have that audio ready to queue up, we can hear from Kevin Durant on, one, what it means to come back from the Achilles injury. But in reference to this response, he was talking about Damian Lillard and Jason Tatum, but obviously us in our market will group Tyrese Halliburton in there as well. So here's what KD had to say about coming back from the Achilles tear.
I mean, a lot of guys, I feel like a lot of guys have bounced back and became themselves again. Mine's just the most, popular, but I feel like a lot of guys have bounced back that I took inspiration from when I was going through my journey. But those guys are cut from a cloth that,
how they got here.
Yeah, it's rare. They're rare individuals anyway. So this is just a little stoppage in their journey that they just gonna have to sit down and lock in on, and it's easy. I think it'll be easy for them to lock in on once they truly grasp that, like, I'm gonna be out for a year. And I think that takes a few weeks for you to truly understand. It's just probably their first time in their whole lives.
Yeah.
They got to sit down and not play sport. They can't. You physically can't play.
Yeah.
That's probably the first time that they had to go through that, and that's just you can either elevate or drown, in my opinion. And I think both of those dudes have shown you time and time again that they're going to continue to elevate as individuals and as players.
Pretty interesting stuff coming from a guy who knows way too much about that topic.
Yeah, and again, in that clip from the Mind the Game podcast, which is LeBron's podcast that he co-hosts with Steve Nash, they had Kevin Durant on recently, and I thought the part where he says you can either basically sink or swim, that kind of resonated. And I think when he also mentioned, hey, these guys are cut from different cloth, I would throw Tyrese Halliburton in that same category when it comes to, beating the odds, being sort of the underdog, and usually prevailing on the other side. I mean, you look at this playoff run in general, I felt like this was and I believe the playoff run was just over 60 days. It was a 2-month run of Tyrese Halliburton sort of raising his middle finger to anybody who doubted him and the Pacers. And I think this is another opportunity to sort of prove anybody wrong, even myself. Like, I'm sitting up here saying, I won't pretend like I'm not. Hey, you're asking me if the Pacers title window is closed for the next few years. I said yes. Tyrese, if you're listening, feel free to use it as motivation if you need it. Not even saying that you need it from me, but I think every little thing along the way, he's used as motivation, and this can be another, step in that direction. And also, Brad Stevens, who we know very well here in Indiana because of the Butler ties and, obviously the IU coaching rumors, but he's still in Boston, and he's happy in Boston, I would imagine. He mentioned in his end-of-season press conference, Jeff, that right after Tyrese tore his Achilles, they reached out to the Pacers and were offering them, anything they needed, basically, information on, the process or things like that. And I know some people were kind of like, well, what can they say? Tatum was only a few weeks before, but they ended up, I believe, going to the same doctor to get the surgery done, Dr. O'Malley, who's one of the best in the world at the Achilles repair surgery. So, again, just an all-class sort of, community. Sometimes you can get caught up in the rivalries and, the playoff experiences and the wins and losses, but in moments like that, you're reminded that you still want to see the best players in the world be healthy, and really any player be healthy.
I think there's ways to challenge yourself and maybe compete. Like, I could even see Tyrese Halliburton being a guy that, like, as he starts his rehab process and maybe he hits a milestone every once in a while, right? You video that and you send it to Jason Tatum and go, here you go, Doug. Get ready. We're gonna be balling against each other soon.
And they were.
I could see that going back and forth to kind of push each other, couldn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And they were close before the injuries because they had gotten close throughout the Team USA experience, and so I would expect this to unite them even more. And Damian Lillard, we know what he is as far as his mental fortitude, another underdog sort of story. So, and if anything, the storyteller in me feels like this blip, as Kevin Durant kind of put it, along the journey will just make the story better.
Yeah, and I think one of the things, and I've seen other athletes go through serious injuries before, and on the other side of those injuries, they all kind of say, hey, this is, they get philosophical about it. Like, look, I wish it never happened. It was terrible. I didn't like it. It was a dark time, but it was part of my journey, and this is where you go. This is how you get there.
And to pivot a bit, one of the things that Kevin Pritchard mentioned in his end-of-season press conference, and we've really hammered on it, is the opportunity it creates for your young guys. And I thought it was hilarious and very fitting that Benedict Mathurin yesterday posted the photo of him dunking on Miles Turner. And I believe this was during their sort of mini retreat before training camp started for the Pacers, that is, last year. And that is the most Ben Mathurin thing ever, where, everyone's up in arms about Miles Turner leaving, and he's like, you know what, I'm going to post this photo of me dunking on the guy because he's the enemy now. And I think part of that was tongue-in-cheek. I don't think it's any sort of, real animosity.
I'd imagine they're friends, aren't they?
But, yeah, I would imagine that, they're friends, or at least friendly, and now it's, you're on the other side, brother, so I got a kick out of that, and I was thinking, Benedict Mathurin. When I saw that, and we have debated, Ben's value and his future with the team and his ceiling, his potential. When I saw that post, Jeff, I was like, you know what? I might be buying more stock in Benedict Mathurin because he's crazy, but good crazy. And I think you need that, and you
Lance
need at least one guy like that.
Crazy?
Even Lance crazy was
Lance was fun. Yeah, he was fun.
I think Benedict is a little bit more cutthroat. You're not going to see him doing any air guitars. In his mind, is probably finger guns, because I want to make sure that anybody I'm playing against feels my wrath type of thing. So very fitting for Benedict to post. I got a kick out of it. I laughed hard. I was like, man, this guy is nuts. But every NBA team, I believe, needs a guy that's kind of wired like that to make sure that everyone remembers, it's us against everybody else.
I don't know if I mentioned this last week or not, but I had seen some video of the 3-on-3 league recently. And Lance, he was just being Lance, man, coming up the floor, handling the ball in the most flamboyant of ways, dribbling around, finding his own shot. He's in this very colorful uniform. And I thought, man, he has found his spot. He's found his home, because he looked like he was having a good time.
Yeah, I think he's one of those basketball lifers. I don't know if we'll ever stop seeing clips of Lance Stevenson playing basketball as long as he can physically play. It's kind of like JMV, who, by the way, I have to ask if he's back in action yet. I haven't talked to my buddy in a while, but it's sort of like that.
I mandated that he not play for a couple weeks.
Oh, man, I don't know if he's going to listen.
Back into
I'm like,
now.
JMV, man, he likes to get it in.
He's disregarded that news, because last Saturday when I was hosting IST, once we got off the air, he was still in the studio because he did a JMV takeover, and he had a gym bag. I said, where are you headed? He's like, going to hoop tomorrow morning. You are insane.
Yep, that's him.
He's the best. He and I will talk about something, and he'll go, yeah, that sounds great. I'm going to do that. And then, of course, he just goes, and he's JMB. That's who he is. That's what he does. We love him.
He is truly unique.
That's how that works. It's the Fan Morning Show, 93.5, 107.5. The Fan, Kevin Bowen, out on vacation this week. He'll be back next week. And then, James, you guys get rid of me for the rest of the month. I know you're looking forward to that.
Yeah,
probably.
You want to tell people what you got going on?
Yeah, my family and I are very lucky right now. My wife's sister and her brother, or her son, I can't even, let me start over. It's one of those days. My wife's sister and her husband have moved to France, to Paris, for a couple of years for his job. So we're trying to take advantage of that and have a place to stay and a base of operations and go hang out for a couple of weeks. So I'm looking forward to that. We did that for the Olympics and the Tour de France last year because we, again, had a place to stay, and it makes a difference. So I'm looking forward to that. It'll be a lot of fun.
Mark, do you have any family that lives in Paris or France or Europe?
No.
I mean, I can do a 23andMe and see. I don't think so, though.
Mark is international. He's got friends in Brazil, Peru, Indiana. Well, I'm talking about all the towns in Indiana. So
that's true. Yeah,
that's actually pretty funny.
None of my relatives have left Illinois or Milwaukee or Northwest Indiana. They've all stayed the same.
Could you be any more Midwest? And honestly, I say that as someone who has probably got the same sort of family tree in different locations.
No one wants to branch out. You don't want to go to L.A. or Arizona, something, anything? No.
Oh, okay. I am now in the big city of Indianapolis, which is a big city. It's a major city, but to these people, sometimes it's like New York, and I'm like, it's not that big. Mm-hmm. It's not that far either.
Everything is relative, James.
This is true.
Everything is relative.
This is true.
I've lived in the big cities, and I've lived in medium-sized cities and even smaller places when I was first starting out. I will take the size of Indianapolis every day of the week and twice on Sunday. You want big city, you just drive 2.5 hours north and you're there.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
Related to the Colts.
Yep.
And I know we're going to pivot a little bit, and we'll bounce around because it's that time of year, honestly. So I had a piece this morning at The Athletic, and I had to basically break down a few different contract situations, like players that are going into contract years. So I'm going to name 3 players that I had to break down. I'm going to ask you all, would you extend their contract or would you let them walk? So
we get to play GM, Mark. You ready? I know Mark is ready for that.
Yeah.
He plays
dream
GM every day.
scenario.
So I think number 1's a given. Bernard Ryman, we all agree he should be
It's
re-signed.
going to be about, what, $20 million a year?
Yeah,
Right in that neighborhood?
Yeah, 20 or 20 plus for sure. You need him on
What
your
percentage
roster.
of the salary? What's the salary cap going to be this coming year? Do you remember?
You're asking the wrong guy at this
Okay.
point. I've been off from the salary cap talk, and honestly, I've been more into Pacers salary cap talk than Colts. But nevertheless, he deserves his money. Now, wide receiver Alec Pierce, going into his 4th season, would you re-sign him?
What's he
Or
do
would
for?
you
What's he do for about?
walk?
Do you know?
What do you mean? Say it again. I'm sorry.
Do you know what his contract is probably going to be worth?
I would imagine that he would command, at least on the open market, if he is free agency, as a deep threat wide receiver that's pretty productive, he's gonna get at least $10 million a year, if not more.
That's them. That's the exact number I had in my head.
So
I like building around that core offensively. You've already got JT done, right?
okay,
And you're going to have to do Ryman. That's why I was asking about the salary cap, because I don't know the precise implications at this point in time. Like you, I've been focused on the Pacers for a while. But, man, I like with Tyler Warren on a rookie contract, Josh Downs still on a rookie contract, I like, and who knows, a couple of years from now, what the physical stature of your big wide receiver is going to be. I like
Michael Pittman?
Yeah, Michael Pittman. I like the 3 of those guys together as a core, and then you pair them up with Tyler Warren, knowing that both Downs and Warren are still on rookie contracts. I think you find a way to get that done and keep that group together, because I think that group, along with JT, can really help support a quarterback, even if that quarterback is mid.
so everything you said, I agreed with until I realized you paid Michael Pittman Jr. last year.
Mm-hmm.
If you extend Alec Pierce this year, that's more money towards the wide receiver position.
Yeah.
And then you have Josh Downs, who's due next year. So are you really going to pay 3 receivers in a row?
Well, I think it's
like
probably
that. That's my.
So let me ask you this: are Josh Downs and Alec Pierce maybe competing for that same spot long term?
I think it's monetarily, yes. They play different receiver spots.
Right.
Monetarily, yes. And I think it might come down to, what do you see from A.D. Mitchell this year?
Mm-hmm.
Because if A.D. Mitchell is, in theory, he's the guy you would think would replace Alec Pierce, because he's a second-round pick. Second-round picks you want to keep around at some point. And it's just an interesting scenario. So I don't think there's like a definitive right or wrong answer, but I definitely wanted to ask.
I think those 3 are you're probably going to need 2 of them, of the 3, to emerge, and those are 2 guys that you pair with Pittman and go around. And again, you're fortunate in that at least for a couple of years, a few of those guys are on rookie contracts.
Gotcha.
Well, I think, and according to Over the Cap, by the way, next year's salary cap is projected to be $295.5 million, and then 2027 jumps to $311 million. So we're seeing some salary cap growth there. So if you're looking to extend some guys, especially if you don't think you have the answer at quarterback, which I don't think the Colts do,
Well, here's the other
you could
thing.
have some money to spread around to some guys.
Right, and here's the other thing. Unless one of those 2 guys just steps up and clearly becomes the quarterback, right? And you go, oh, wow, he's figured it out. Here we go, right? If either one of those guys does that, then you're having a different conversation. You're probably hoping that happens. But at the same time, you're not paying a ton of money at the quarterback position right this second.
Gotcha. Well, we got 2 more I want to get to after the break, but just sort of a thought process. Feel free to weigh in. I mean, heck, if you're feeling frisky, feel free to give us a call, and weigh in as well.
Let's spend Chris Ballard's money. We'll do it next right here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
You're listening to the Fan Morning Show on Sports Radio 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Good morning and welcome into a Tuesday at 93.5, 107.5 The Fan. James Boyd, Jeff Rickard, Mark Dykton with you, and we are just hours away from game time today, James Boyd.
Yes, 4 hours away from the Indiana Fever taking on the Golden State Valkyries over at the Fieldhouse, and Caitlin Clark's return is also 4 hours away.
You know, it's been such an interesting season for the Indiana Fever. Clark has been in and out of the lineup, obviously, with a couple of different injuries. They're 9-9. We talked about the fact that they're 7th in the standings, right with Golden State, who's also 9-9 today. But when you start talking about that 9-9 team, this team has been everything already this year. I mean, they've lost to the worst team in the league, the Washington Mystics, and they just hammered the best team in the league when they were on the road in the Minnesota Lynx own building not that long ago without Caitlin Clark. So this team can clearly play with and defeat anybody in the league. They've also shown that they can have hiccups against anybody in this league.
You can lose against any team in the league, to put it more bluntly. But I do think that they're just looking for some sort of consistency, and the hope, obviously, is that consistency includes Caitlin Clark being available for the team, because when you do lose a player of that caliber, it's very hard to replicate that or replace that. And honestly, she still has to build chemistry with her now new teammate in Ari McDonald, who I believe will help, I think, some of the pressure that Caitlin faces as the ball handler. Ari can take some of that pressure off of her. I know some of the fan base is a little, on edge, like, why would you take the ball out of Caitlin Clark's hands? But I look at it the same way as the Pacers did it with Tyrese Halliburton and Andrew Nembhard. It's like, look, when Tyrese is getting hounded, full court and running through, a bunch of different people and having to go off screens and getting bumped and getting fouled, that wears you down as the game goes on. And I think it drops your ability to be an effective scorer and passer and leader later in the game. So if you can keep Caitlin Clark fresher later in games and really later throughout the season, I think that will help you. So, for everyone who's kind of freaking out, like, why take her off the ball? Calm down, relax a little bit. Ari McDonald, I think, has shown that she can really, hold her own on the offensive and defensive end. And to me, it's just so shocking that she wasn't even on an official roster to open the season. And now it seems like she's an indispensable player for the Fever.
Yeah, and I think it just gives them a number of different lineups to look at and go out there with. And something, one more dimension that other teams are going to have to prepare for. Because as you mentioned, Ari McDonald's been fantastic. From the time she was originally picked up as like an emergency fill-in, and then they had to waive her because of the weird rules around that. And then once she was free, they were able to bring her back. She has been terrific.
Yes. I mean, she was essentially the replacement for DeWanna Bonner, who was officially announced as a member of the Phoenix Mercury. And I cannot wait for that matchup, Mark. Me and the Petty crowd love a good reunion. So she will be playing against the Fever at some point later in the season here in Indianapolis, and that'll be certainly a matchup that we want to keep track of. But as far as Ari McDonald goes, yes, great pickup for her, because she is, to me, a very talented player and someone who is very grateful to be back in the WNBA.
What's that DeWanna Bonner montage look like? The return. What's that? That's going to be like 10 seconds
no
long.
Montage,
show
brother.
a picture of her on the bench.
10 seconds, 1 second for each game she played.
Do you show a picture of her on the bench, clapping, waving?
Nah, you don't show anything, man. Yeah, you boo is what I would imagine they do.
All right. We'll get to the Colts in just a second here, as James promised. But a reminder, people starting to sign up every day. Today's your day. 93.5, 107.5 The Fan. Thrilled to host the Fan Invitational Golf Outing. It's presented by Franciscan Health. It'll be Thursday, August the 7th, tee time of 10 a.m. at the beautiful Legends Golf Club. I'm getting in the mood just listening to the Caddyshack open right here, James.
This is not the Caddyshack. When they said they're playing Caddyshack music, this is not the song I thought of.
No, it's the open of the movie, though.
I understand.
Ooh.
How many times have you seen the movie? Did you?
Plenty of times, but when you say the Caddyshack song, I don't think anyone thinks this is the song.
You're thinking of the Kenny Loggins song,
Yes.
right? Well, this Kenny Loggins, I think, did write this part of it.
I don't know. I remember the first time I heard it, I'm like, is this a religious movie I'm watching? I'm like, oh, no. It is not. It's very much not.
It was a religious experience watching that movie, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
Anyway, we're going to be out there playing golf at Legends Thursday, August 7th, 10 a.m. We'll try not to kill the Gophers. It's one of the things we try to do when we go out there. You never know with this crew, though, at least on accident. It's going to be James Boyd is going to be gone, but everybody else is going to be there. Jake is going to be there, JMV. Kevin, of course, is the real golfer here. He is going to be there. I'll be there. And it's really about helping and supporting the Franciscan Foundation. But again, Thursday, August the 7th, 10 a.m., Legends Golf Club. Get your clubs ready. Join us for a memorable event, and don't miss the chance to make a difference with every single swing. Lots of fun to be had out there. I believe we'll be giving away a set of Mizuno golf clubs, too. Looking forward to that.
Nice pickup if you're able to make it. And otherwise, if you're like me, you're going to Baltimore for a preseason game, I'll see you there.
All right.
I'll bring the Baby Ruths, by the way, to the golf outing.
You're on to Baby Ruths now. Is it depending on the season or what?
We're playing Caddyshack music, so
All
I
right.
figure that's probably appropriate.
Oh, now I
like that. I like that, Mark.
Just don't.
They have a pool there?
I don't think they have a pool.
Damn.
I can see Mark just leaving one near the hole when people go to pick up their golf ball there.
I'll make sure it's when Kevin's doing that.
It's the Fan Morning Show, 93.5, 107.5 The Fan. James, we were talking about things that you would like to see or really questions you had about the Colts and roster makeup and our thoughts on some of those. We were talking about the wide receiver position before we went to break just a moment ago. And it's going to be interesting to see over the next 2 years how that group shakes out, because I know amongst the three, we've seen flashes. Clearly, Alec Pierce has been terrific. Josh Downs has had his moments. A.D. Mitchell, you see the potential, but he's been so inconsistent. Where do you see things shaking out there?
So to recap, before we went to break, and for those who might just be tuning in the 8 o'clock hour, the conversation was about players entering contract years. We all agreed on our mini panel here on the show that Bernhard Raimann is a no-brainer. You have to extend the left tackle because left tackles usually lead to your quarterback either being killed if they're bad or protected if they're good. And I think he's a pretty good left tackle. So we agree on that. Alec Pierce was the next player that we debated. And the conversation I think you're getting at, Jeff, is when you look at who you've paid so far in your wide receiver room, number one being Pittman. He signed a 3 years, $70 million extension last year with the Indianapolis Colts. And then this year, Alec Pierce is eligible for an extension because he's going into a contract year. And then next year, Josh Downs will be up for an extension with this team. So I think that in my mind, the way I kind of made peace with it is that in theory, I would like to keep Alec Pierce in town. But from a feasibility standpoint, from a money standpoint, they might let him walk out the door. Not because he doesn't deserve a raise, but because how much are you going to pay your receivers, especially when you don't know what your situation is at quarterback. So that, to me, is sort of why he's in limbo going into his now fourth season in the NFL.
Yeah, and I do think the one nice part about that, if you're just joining us, and I said it a few moments ago, is for the time being, obviously, Josh Downs and A.D. Mitchell and Tyler Warren, if you want to include him as part of the receiving core there at tight end, they're all playing on rookie contracts right now.
Right. But again, money talks, and at some point you got to pay up. And that's why I think the A.D. Mitchell pick was something we should definitely pay attention to see how it unfolds, because in theory, he would be the player that you would ideally, if Alec Pierce were to become an unrestricted free agent next year, and keep in mind, he might tell people, I don't want to sign right now. I want to bet on myself and see what I can get on the open market. And gosh darn, if he has a season like he just had this past year, he should have plenty of suitors going into 2026. But nevertheless, I'll move on from Alec Pierce. The next player that I had on the list, Kwity Paye. He is a former number one pick, I believe, in 2021. Mm-hmm. They picked up his fifth-year option for this season, so he'll be making a guaranteed $13.4 million. Is Kwity Paye someone you want to retain? Like you're saying, he's not leaving my franchise next offseason. Or are you like, you know what? He perhaps hasn't lived up to being the game wrecker first-round picks are supposed to be at the DN spot.
This one gets really tricky, because we know that the Colts and Chris Ballard in particular, while he's been running this, he likes to keep his core players together. He likes to reward the guys on his team.
And he loves the trenches.
He does. He loves
the big
trenches.
guys.
But it gets complicated because I don't know that Kwity Paye, who continues to show flashes, but he's got to be consistent. And coming into a contract, he's got to be consistent every week. Look, I say this all the time. You don't have to be the guy that has 10, 12, 15 sacks. You do need to be the guy that is constantly harassing the quarterback.
But does he need to be that guy, though? I think that's the debate, Jeff. I mean, he's been a very solid player.
He's been fine.
But that's the thing. Is fine good enough, Mark, for a player that you drafted in the first round? And keep in mind, since then, you drafted Laiatu last year in the first round at defensive end, and then you drafted JT Tuimoloau this year in the second round as a D end.
Yeah, I think the pressure is definitely on him to kind of put up or shut up, because now not only are you in a contract year, but also Dio has left. There's more rotation for you there. So can you finally produce, and then, can you live up to the hype that has been built around being a first round pick and everything? I don't know. For the time being, he'll have to prove it to me. I would almost say, I'm in the latter category for now, where I'm like, he's been fine. Is he a difference maker? Is he worth paying $15 million or more for in the following years, or would you rather just let him go to free agency and whatnot? I'm in the latter category at the moment. Be proven otherwise, I guess.
This conversation brings up the broader picture as well. Things obviously have shifted and changed for the Indianapolis Colts, right? I mean, starting from the very beginning of the offseason where they go and get Daniel Jones, and they say, we're going to have a quarterback competition, right? Which means you don't really have a quarterback at this point in time. You're waiting to see one of those guys emerge. And then the unfortunate and terrible, untimely passing of Jim Irsay. And how are his daughters now, specifically Carly, how is she going to look at running this franchise? Is Chris Ballard here long term? Does he have to show something this year? Do his quarterback selections, one of them, have to show up and play well? What's the future for him? Because if this team somehow, some way comes out and they're flirting with playoff contention and win a game or two down the stretch, how much does that change the trajectory of all the things we're talking about?
Certainly. And I think that is what you have to look at from a macro level, and it's something you certainly can't dismiss because of the changes in leadership. Now, the last player on the list that I want to get your thoughts on, and kind of a sneaky important player, I think, in this defense, Nick Cross. Now, this is a player that the Colts traded up further into the third round to draft him a few years ago, yes. And this was what, Chris Ballard really doesn't do too much of this when it comes to trading up in the draft. They traded up a few years ago to get Nick Cross. He started 4 games through his first 2 seasons until last year. They moved him to strong safety, started all 17 games as strong safety, had a really good year, had, I believe, 3 interceptions, some pass breakups, and had a career year. Now, is he someone that I think he has to, we can all probably agree, he has to prove more, yes, I think, than the 1 year. But if he has another solid season, is he someone you would like to bring back? Because, and I get it, maybe strong safety isn't a super premium position, but he, like you said, you've invested early in this guy, and to move on, I think would be, at least in my own personal opinion, it might be a little premature, but I do want to see more from Nick Cross.
Can you ever have too many members of the secondary? No. Like, you would like to have a nice plethora of talent in there. He also he's in the Quiddy,
up some of that talent this year too.
Yeah, he's in the Quiddy Pay category as well, where he hasn't proven enough for me yet. I guess if he was willing to sign like a team-friendly deal, that's one thing, but he's another one that is in prove-it mode, I think, heading into 2025. In my opinion,
it all comes back to something that I always, when I'm starting to evaluate teams throughout the league every year, I go up and down their roster and how many question marks do they have, and it feels like the Colts' list of question marks going into the season is far lengthier than certainties. Right? There are a few certainties on this team, guys you don't have to worry about, guys you trust, guys you're into. We've talked about JT, we talk about Michael Pittman Jr. I think we feel pretty good about Tyler Warren at this point in time, but he's a rookie. He's going to go through rookie times. We feel good about Quentin Nelson. I think we like Ryman and want to get him re-signed. We love DeForest Buckner, right? That's my favorite certainty of the entire team. I think you feel like you can depend on the 2 free agent secondary guys they picked up, right? And Bynum and Ward. After that, there's just questions everywhere, James.
There are questions, and that's why I was throwing them all at you, because I was going through it myself yesterday.
But just a lot of ifs.
Yeah,
if.
You can certainly, check out my piece of The Athletic if you want to see my thoughts on it and kind of lay it out in full. But, yeah, that is the overall theme of this season, and I think a lot of these questions, when we get the answers, either good or bad, Jeff, will determine which direction this franchise goes in. And the biggest question, obviously being, because you can't overlook it, the quarterback position. Have you answered that enough? Is Daniel Jones your guy? Is Anthony Richardson your guy? Or is your guy not on the roster yet, and are you going to draft that guy over the next couple of years?
Let me ask you this, because I want to bring up the playmaker question, because I've always felt that really good teams in the NFL have between 2 and 4 just playmakers on both sides of the defense and offense. Sometimes it's a little more, sometimes it's a little less, but guys that really consistently impact the game, right? And I feel in some ways there are positions, guys that we just talked about, that are playmakers. Like, I think you go get Bynum and Ward because you think that they're going to make some plays, right?
Yeah, for sure.
We just talked about DeForest Buckner, who I think I love having him in the middle of a defensive line, any defensive line. He's going to be terrific, right? We talked about JT. We've talked about, the solidness of a Quentin Nelson on the offensive line. So I think they're getting some of those difference makers and playmakers, but it all comes back to what you just talked about. Do you have the guy that's driving the car that can take the car where it needs to go? And right now we don't know if you have a guy that's going to have the keys to the car, start it up, and maneuver through all the traffic and get you to where you need to go on time. We don't know if they have the quarterback that can do that right now.
I think the Colts are one of the more interesting teams just as far as like how they are laid out from like a financial standpoint. They have a lot of skill position players that are getting a lot of money.
Good point.
But the biggest, most important position in sports, they don't have an answer for. And so it's going to be very interesting this season to see if the quarterback situation doesn't pan out, what is their next strategy? Are they blowing it up and just restarting? And what does that mean for the front office and the head coaching staff and all that? Where are we going there? And what would that also mean for the big money players? Are they then finding like are the Colts trade deadline, play pieces where they're firing off pieces there and everything? It could be a very interesting season depending on how this Colts season rolls, because it could be either a factory reset where you're just starting from scratch all over again, or it could be like a minor tweak here and there. Or, well, maybe we got something here we can add to this. But for the moment, I'm looking at factory reset, I think.
Yeah, and it always comes back to like, if
this phone doesn't work at all.
Wipe the slate clean.
Mark's weekly trip into the Verizon Center.
I mean,
AT&T for 20 plus years, my friend.
I can't blame him. I can't blame him for
pick your
thinking
large
that.
carrier here.
Yeah.
But they're in this situation at quarterback, right? They've got a game breaker on offense with JT.
Mm-hmm.
He's getting mileage on him too.
Yeah, he is, but I still think there's time left in his career. I'm not too worried about him at this point in time. But if you don't have a quarterback to take some pressure off that, they're just going to force those quarterbacks to try and make plays and make sure that Taylor doesn't kill them.
I just also don't think that Anthony Richardson's style and Shane Steichen's style mesh at all. Like, I think they're kind of clashing against each other with what Anthony Richardson's strengths are versus what Shane Steichen wants to do offensively. So I'll be very curious to see how Daniel Jones does stylistically in Shane Steichen's offense.
To that point, Mark, the biggest word that we heard this offseason was consistency. And even when I believe it was ESPN, Stephen Holder kind of pressed Shane Steichen on this, he said, hey, let's just call it what it is. Anthony Richardson is obviously more inconsistent as a passer than Daniel Jones, but he's also more explosive. He can give you the boom play, the wow play, the last season opener, he had 3 passes of 50-plus yards. Like, it was incredible. But then you have Daniel Jones, who's less explosive, but he's more consistent.
Mm-hmm.
And when it was laid out like that for him, Shane Steichen still said, we need consistency from either guy, no matter who it is. He didn't flat out say it's going to be Daniel Jones, but my ears kind of perked up like, okay, that's what you value more. And honestly, I can't blame him, because if you look at the Colts' offense, you cannot really run an offense or have a successful NFL offense when it's feast or famine like it was. Now, I will say I thought the offense looked much more tailored to Anthony's strengths after he got benched and came back, because we were all sitting up here like, where was this? Why didn't you do this from the beginning? Because it looked like you were trying to shoehorn him into some Peyton Manning-style offense where he's throwing it way too much. You got to run him, which is a different factor because of the injuries. I think that's why perhaps they maybe want to throw a little bit more, but you probably need to run him a lot more. Give him some short, crossers, which is why Tyler Warren's such a big pickup, Jeff. You want to make it easy for him, but is that enough for Anthony to retain the job, win the job, and then ultimately prove that he is your franchise guy? We've talked about, just briefly now, Alec Pierce and his upside, and Nick Cross got to prove something. Kwity Paye, you haven't lived up to perhaps the hype of being a first-round pick. But Anthony Richardson, dude, you're the highest drafted player this franchise has had since Andrew Luck. And you have nothing to show for it through 2 seasons.
No, way too much boomer bust for my liking. Make the layups. That's what I would tell Anthony Richardson.
Yeah.
You have Tyler Warren. Make the check down throws.
Mm-hmm.
Make the mid level throws. We know you can make the deep shots here and there. Make the layups. Make it easy for yourself. Make the offense go. Have some sustainable drives. Not going 3 and out because you've missed like a 20-yard shot to Alec Pierce or something.
And the great part about where Anthony is starting from, if you want to look at this as glass half full, if he can demonstrate that he can take the layups consistently, we know he can make the big play. We've seen that, right? So you know that part of his game is there, as opposed to some quarterbacks that are captain check down all the time. And yes, they're taking the layups, but it's always for 4 yards and 3 yards, and they're throwing the ball to the back in the backfield all the time. If he can take the layups and convert what we know he can do with the big plays, now you're cooking with gas.
Well, I'll tell you what, if we're looking for quarterback solutions, it might be Caitlin Clark. I know the NFL reposted video, I believe, from Scott Agnes and Andrew Chernoff of Wish TV when she was throwing a football around after practice yesterday, which lets us know that she's feeling good. And so, a little tongue-in-cheek there, but to kind of pivot a little bit back to more pressing issues of the day, again, in less than 4 hours now, about 3.5 hours, we'll be seeing Caitlin Clark get underway and return and play for the Indiana Fever. So to put a button on that Colts conversation, if you want to, solve some things, just call Caitlin Clark.
All right. Well, speaking of Caitlin Clark, let's check things down.
The Morning Checkdown on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
I'm old enough to remember a fax machine and a fax that came through in the middle of the summer one time that just said, "I'm back." Caitlin Clark is back. No fax machine, but she will be on the floor, and I would imagine taking her rightful starting spot today when the Fever play a noon game at the Fieldhouse against the Golden State Valkyries.
Yes, have your earplugs ready if you're going to the game because it'll be very loud, like it usually is, but a lot more high-pitched because it'll be a lot of kids there for camp day.
11:45, the Fan pregame show with Eddie Garrison. Then you'll hear the play-by-play with John Nolan right here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Do you own a fax machine, Jeff?
No.
I think my parents still do. I think I saw one in their basement the other day. I'm like, throw this out. My dad's like, well, you never know if you never need it. I'm like, is it end of days? When did we send in a fax machine?
No, several years ago, my wife and I loaded up a car with all the old copy machines, fax machines, whatever we had, and just took them into one of those recycling centers.
I'm not a hoarder, but like my dad and my wife, I swear they're like of the same brain. I'm like,
if you need a 2004 laptop computer, though, I think I have one of those stored away somewhere.
That's the ones, the see-through ones with the colors on it. The
I think it was a
Dells?
gateway
Okay.
with the look like the cows on the outside. You remember those?
I tell my wife all the time, like, Ashley, you leave town, and you give me a weekend, this garage will look totally different because there'll be so much crap out of here that you don't even know was in the first place.
This check down took a turn.
I'm laying on the couch right now.
Major League Baseball. Cincinnati Reds didn't get off the couch last night. They lose to the Marlins by a score of 12-2. Also, the Chicago Cubs got hammered by the Minnesota Twins 8-1. And Alex Golden is celebrating somewhere today because the Cardinals were the winner of those three teams. They beat the Washington Nationals by a score of 4-2. And we haven't really talked about it because we no reason for us to. But the Nationals, they just completely cleaned house right in the middle of the season this past week.
Yeah, that was kind of like the Penske move right before the Indy 500.
Yeah. They fired their general manager, their manager. They're just starting all over there.
Yeah.
Not our problem, though, right? The Indianapolis Indians defeated the Gwinnett Stripers by a score of 8-1. Those two teams will also play this afternoon at 1:35. There are plenty of reasons to play hooky today, James.
I'm always down to play hooky.
I think either way you go, you're going to get kids at the Fever game or at the Indians game.
Yeah, I was going to say, it'll be more lively than usual at this time of the day downtown, but the vibes will be good.
I'm looking forward to it. All right, we've still got guests coming up today later on, James Boyd. I'm looking forward to this.
Yes, we do. At 9 o'clock, the 9 o'clock hour, we'll hear from Chloe Peterson, who is the Indiana Fever beat reporter for Indy Star, and then we'll hear from Ben Steele, who works for the Journal Sentinel out of Milwaukee. He covers Marquette, and he'll give us the latest on Kam Jones, the Pacers' second-round pick.
All right, looking forward to that. Also, we've got some social media feedback to get to coming up in just a moment, JB. People reaching out, talking about the things we're talking about this morning. Get into some of that and open up phone lines, too, on this summer Wednesday.
Oh, I like that.
239-1070, number to call. We'll do it all next to 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
You're listening to the Fan Morning Show on Sports Radio 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Hump day, Mark. Can't believe we're already here.
Flying by.
Yeah. It's the Fan Morning Show. James Boyd, Jeff Rickard, Mark Dykton, and we invite everybody else to participate as well as we're kind of like, feels like halfway through the summer already, right?
It does. I think the summer went faster because of the long Pacers playoff run, and we still have a couple of things left on the summer docket when it comes to WNBA All-Star Weekend coming up here. I believe not this upcoming weekend, but the weekend after that. And then, getting ready for Colts camp.
Yeah. Speaking of the Colts, the Larry O'Brien Trophy, who frequently contributes to the program here, tweets at us that looking at the Colts depth chart, are they actually going to be good? Always depends on quarterback, but looking at the rest of the roster top to bottom, they're actually decently deep. If the Jones-AR combo is competent at all, they stay relatively healthy, they can make a run at the division. What do you think?
I think we say that every year, and they don't win the division.
I think there's a gap between the Texans and everybody else right now, though.
But in theory, yes, I completely agree. They always have a chance to get there, and in fairness to the Colts, they haven't been a horrendously bad team the last couple of years, the first few years of Shane Steichen's tenure. 9-8 that first year under Steichen, 8-9 last year. But the question is, can you get to that 10-win, perhaps 11-win threshold that would help you get into the playoffs, win the division for the first time in forever? And I think just a lot of little things along the way, too. Like, for example, win your season opener for a change.
That's what I was going to say. I was like, can we just win week 1? Can we do that first?
It almost feels like a given that they start 0-1, right?
Exactly. And to me, the schedule to open the year isn't the hardest thing in the world, but it isn't super easy either. You're facing, I believe, Miami at home in week 1, and then you got Denver at home as well.
And everybody loves the Broncos this year.
Yeah, and I think those are two borderline, playoff teams. I believe the Dolphins, they might have snuck in last year. I can't remember exactly. I know the Broncos got in, but the point being, they're talented teams. They're not teams that are, just bottom of the barrel. And part of me is like, I want to agree with the cynical Colts fan who's like, just put Jacksonville on the road in week 1 so we can get 2 birds in 1 stone. We never win the season opener anyways, and we never went on the road in Jacksonville. Just get it both out of the way in 1 loss instead of 2. But jokes aside, can you buck some of those trends to finally get over the hump? Because, when you're playing from behind all season, those wins stack up. This isn't the NBA, man. 0-2 in the NBA, you got 80 games left. 0-2 in the NFL, and you might be, out of playoff contention very early.
Dolphins were not in the playoffs last year, by the way.
They just missed it at the end. If you want to get crazy, I'll give you 2 things that the Colts could do that would change their season immeasurably, because it's just 2 things that never happen.
Okay.
You win your opening game.
Okay.
And you sweep Jacksonville.
You're strutting like a peacock if that happens. You're hanging banners left and right.
Should I disagree?
Those are the 2 things they can never do.
I'm like, man, at this point, would you take a win over Jacksonville in Jacksonville over the win at home at this point, just to end a couple of streaks? And really, I think it's a psychological thing too, just to prove that you can do it.
Right.
It's so weird where you can't even say they've lost every season opener in recent years, because in 2022 they tied. It's like they're allergic to winning the game.
That was a fun game to break down the next day.
Oh, that was the funniest. That was my first NFL game I ever covered. I remember going into the locker room, and my assignment that day was to essentially ask each player, how weird is it to tie as a professional athlete? And you're going around to different players, and everyone's giving you these cliche answers like, we want to win, and it is weird, but it's not a loss, so it's not the worst thing in the world. And then EJ Speed, who is now a Houston Texan, by the way, told me, this is some bleep, bleep, bleep. And I was like, you know what? I agree. I'm glad you said that, so I used that for my story.
Maybe I'm misremembering. That game did kind of feel like a loss, though, because it was like they had to rally back just to tie. They were like heavy favorites, and then they had to rally back just to tie the game.
This is how I knew I was probably cut out for the job and ready to, I guess, be on the Colts beat officially, because in the locker room after the game, there were a few questions of, what does it say about this team to come back and rally and, not lose and show some fight. And I was thinking at the time, this bad Houston team, what the heck are you talking about? Like, they should not be worried about this at all when it comes to coming back. They should have beat this team going away. That was certainly a weird game, and really just has been a weird sort of opening week for the Colts here in not even recent years, just several years. And so, again, you want to do something different. You want to feel different throughout the 2025 season. Do something different. Win your season opener. Win the game you're supposed to. And really, I think last year, looking at their schedule, they didn't have a couple of wins where we were like, you won a game you weren't supposed to. I feel like even with Frank Reich, who I believe they should have moved on from, I'm not saying they should go back to him or anything like that. However, under Frank Reich, there was always a couple of wins where you were like, you know what? You got one, maybe you shouldn't. I mean, they beat the Chiefs one year under Frank Reich. That hasn't happened.
That was in Kansas City, too.
I believe. That, too. I was referencing the 2022 season, I believe, where they beat him at home as well. So, again, that's 2 wins against the Kansas City Chiefs. When have we looked at this roster, looked at these wins over the last couple of years and said, oh, that's a marquee win right there?
Yeah. Signature wins.
The one that stings to me the most that I'll probably, to me, it was a franchise low, and Andrew Luck was the quarterback. The 6-0 loss to the Jacksonville Jaguars. 3 times they failed to convert fourth downs while they were in field goal range. Like, they couldn't do anything right that day. That might have been the most frustrated I've ever been watching a football game.
Bad juju. So to pivot a bit, I do want to get your thoughts on this, guys. So I had a chance to talk to Bob Kravitz yesterday. I had him on my podcast, the James Boyd podcast, and he was giving us some inside information or some, I think, new details on the Miles Turner situation. And he said that he heard that when Miles offered the deal from the Bucs, he took it within a few minutes. So it wasn't necessarily, do I go back and ask for them to match? He took that right away. And I thought that was an interesting nugget that Bob Kravitz dropped. And he also mentioned that he believes that Miles was told, you're going to be viewed here as being the second option. And that was intriguing to him. And so that to me was again, another layer that I hadn't necessarily thought about. And I was like, wow, so imagine you get the offer and it's just like, boom, I'm taking it. There is no necessarily counter or anything like that. It was not even a second thought. He took it within minutes.
Well, a couple things to that. And I go back to something I said that's just been gnawing at me. And I don't know if this is true or not, but I think it's a scenario. Look, the Bucs contact him and his agent. They go, look, Giannis loves you. We love you. We think you're good enough to be the second option here. We're going to make you a sweet offer, and you're number one on our list. But we got to know right now because we're moving swiftly, and there are other guys that if you can't do this and you're the guy we want, then we got to move on. How do you feel about this? Now, I pair that with our good buddy Q, who sent me a DM the other day, who said that from what he's heard from people close to the situation, that Miles has been working out and rehabbing in Milwaukee every summer for a while now. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's something that we can check into, I think. Be kind of interesting.
That is interesting. Certainly something I want to, kind of vet, but that is very interesting.
Yeah, I don't know the veracity of that, but if that is true, that's maybe he's just comfortable there for whatever reason. I don't know. Maybe he likes living by the lake.
Let's dive more into this after the break. I know we got to get to a break here, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff. But
nope, you're learning quickly.
Yeah, I'm learning the way things go on the radio. But yes, let's dive more into this after the break to kind of break down more of the little nuggets we've kind of plucked over the last few days over the Miles Turner decision to go to Milwaukee.
That's next. 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
You're listening to the Fan Morning Show on Sports Radio 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Mark's got me in a good mood on this Wednesday morning. Hope you're having a terrific time wherever you might be, whether you're on vacation, headed out on vacation, still coming back from vacation, heading into the grind of just another day at the work. We appreciate you being with us here at 93.5, 107.5 The Fan. And, James, I don't know, there's a lot of different ways you can listen to The Fan right now. You can go to 93.5, 107.5. My favorite current way, and really the best way, is go to 93.3 FM, and then just click it over on your car stereo to the HD2 at 93.3. You can hear us crystal clear as about anywhere.
You can hear us on the moon.
Yes, it's amazing. It's really good stuff. And or you can listen to us anywhere. You take us where you go with the app. Download the app. Do that. 1075thefan.com. Or you can just talk to your friendly neighborhood device. Call them listening devices now, but they're actually the connected devices. Just say, "Hey Alexa, play 1075 The Fan." Or you can say, "Siri, play 1075 The Fan," whatever it is. You're good to go.
You know what? I got home from the show yesterday, and I heard someone down the hallway from me firing up the show. And it sounded like they were playing it from the beginning because I heard your intro, Jeff, and I was thinking, right on, brother. Appreciate the support. And I have no clue who lives in that apartment. I don't see many passer-buyers when I'm going in and out, usually because I'm always like just dipping down the stairs and getting up out of there pretty quickly. But that was kind of funny. So I was like, it's weird hearing your voice coming from the walls of someone else's room or whatever, and I have no clue who that person is at all. But thanks for listening, whoever that is.
Craziest thing that's ever happened to me along those lines is many, many years ago. I used to have my mom come on every once in a while and pick college football games because she was vaguely aware of things but not really dialed in. And so it was just, and she's funny. So it was just funny to hear her talking about some things. And then she was particularly funny one day. I made a promo out of it. I'm getting up at like 4:30 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and I go out to my car. I turn on my car, and the radio starts, and the first thing you hear is your mom talking on the radio. It was very bizarre. Very bizarre.
Yeah, that's pretty funny.
All right, a moment ago, you were talking about a podcast you did yesterday concerning Pacers. You had Bob Kravitz on, and you
yes.
felt like you picked up a couple of nuggets there.
Certainly. Like I said, I had Bob on the James Boyd podcast, and just real quick, the name idea was not mine. My boss at The Athletic was like, if you want to do a podcast, keep it simple. People can find it very simply. And I was like, all right, I guess I'll be the very arrogant guy who names the show after himself. But I wanted it to be something cool. And he's like, no, cool isn't always as successful when it comes to people finding it. So you can find that podcast anywhere. But, of course, don't do it just now. Listen to us here on 107.5 The Fan. And, honestly, I'll give you the same information here since I'm pulling double duty. But Bob, again, revealed that, one, Miles accepted the offer from the Bucks within minutes of it being slapped down on the table. So he, again, that to me, it verifies the fact that the Pacers were not able to match, because how are you going to match something when the guy says I'm leaving within minutes, not hours or not, within a couple of days. It was minutes. So that was one nugget. The other nugget was Miles being kind of wooed by the fact that he would have a bigger role with the Bucks. Now, that's the part where I could see both sides of it. I could see it from Miles' perspective, where he's like, you know what? I've been viewed as this player for most of my career. For the first 10 years of my career, I've been viewed as this role player. I think that I could be more than that. I could be, a real, sort of centerpiece of the offense, or touch the ball more on that end of the floor. But I wonder about his fit with, not with Giannis per se, but just his production, his fit without Tyrese Halliburton. Because if you look at some of the best years of Miles' career, the last couple of years, and his efficiency and things like that, he really turned a corner. He talked about this himself when he played with Tyrese Halliburton. He mentioned that in his letter in the Players Tribune. So how do you all feel about Miles perhaps being in a bigger role, and how that might look when you don't have, in my opinion, arguably one of the best floor generals in the NBA setting you up on offense?
I honestly, from a standpoint of how they're going to build the team and what they're going to do, I'm not quite sure what Milwaukee's thinking right now, to be honest with you. Miles is a good player. I don't have a problem with that. You put him with Giannis, it's going to take a lot of pressure off. I mean, not that he had a ton of pressure on him here, I don't think. But I just don't know I know what Milwaukee's done with the stretch rule and letting Lillard go and picking up all that money, and now they're paying Miles a bunch, and they're doing everything they can to please Giannis because I think they know if they just keep him, they've got a chance. But I don't know. I don't fear the Bucks at this point.
I think Turner.
I don't fear the deer.
I think Turner, his mindset is, I put in 10 years at one place.
Mm-hmm.
The guy I've been running with is going to be out for all next season, and I can pair myself up with a top 5 player in the league, which I've never had before in my life. I'd kind of like to see how that would go. I can totally see that being the reason why, because how often do you get to pair yourself up with Giannis or someone of that caliber, especially if you've never had it? You've been in the same place 10 years, and all of a sudden you can try to play with one of the best in the game.
Yeah.
Right now, here's our projected starting lineup. You ready for this? Kevin Porter Jr., Gary Trent Jr., Kyle Kuzma, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Miles Turner.
Yeah, like I said yesterday, and since this deal went down, I think, and actually, I don't have to say it myself, Eric Name, who we had on last week, who covers the Bucks for The Athletic, he told us, and he would know a lot more than us, he believes they're a mid-tier Eastern Conference team next year.
Yeah.
They'll be better because, in theory, you're not keeping an injured Damian Lillard on your roster. So,
and as you guys pointed out fairly, Lillard and Giannis never really had a chance to truly connect together because of injuries and things like that.
They did not. So I'm curious to see again how Miles embraces this new role and if it comes to fruition for the Bucks, where it kind of all comes together. But I'm reading about how Giannis will be the guy bringing the ball up for them, being their initiator, and I'm like, man, that's a lot to put on that guy, to ask him to be your point guard, your best scorer, one of your best defenders, and he can do all these things, but to do that night in and night out at his age, that's a lot to ask. And also, is that enough to put you back in title contention? I don't think it is, but the bigger picture question that we talked about throughout the show over the last few days is it enough to just keep Giannis happy? So that to me was interesting. And also, one other last little nugget that I can get into with you all is the fact that when I asked Bob, and Bob's been around, and the reason why I was asking him all these questions, and I've done my own digging as well, and some of the stuff that we've heard is overlapped. But one of the things he dropped was he believes, and according to the people he's spoken to behind the scenes, that the Pacers were going to match, and also that the injury to Tyrese did not affect how much they were willing to give Miles. Now, he did mention, hey, you might have came in too low for the initial offer, but the bottom line is they were willing to perhaps meet that number, and he was saying he does not believe that the Tyrese injury affected negotiations to the degree where it was we're just not going to pay this guy. Now, it's easy for the Pacers to say that now. Oh, we would have paid the luxury tax, we would have did all these things, but I do wonder just if I could give truth serum to everyone involved, and not to say I don't trust Bob's reportings, I do, but, how truthful are you being about the injury to Tyrese? Because I just think that if he was healthy and you're still telling us Miles is going to the Bucks, and honestly, it comes down to Miles. I do want to ask him flat out, just did you want to leave? And is that conversation different if Tyrese is healthy? Because to Mark's point, yeah, when you put it like that, I can go play with the top 5 player in the world and not miss a gap year, unlike my former teammates now. It's an interesting conversation.
It's fascinating, and it'll be interesting to see how he fits in and how that offense looks. And we know what he'll do defensively, but I'm just curious to see what the Bucks are going to do philosophically with that starting lineup as they play next year, because I don't see it fitting maybe they're smart, and they're certainly smarter than me, but I'm having trouble finding that fit with that group right now.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I can't really disagree until we see the actual basketball get played. So, we'll wait and see.
All right, coming up in a moment, we'll talk about the Indiana Fever. They tip off just 3 hours from now, 3 hours and change from now, over at the Field House today, and we'll tell you all about that. And Caitlin Clark returning to the court this afternoon. It's next at 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
You're listening to the Fan Morning Show on Sports Radio 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
You want an easy out from work today? I got one for you, James. Work half the day, go to lunch, and don't come back. Go to the field house instead. I don't know. Can you still get tickets for today's game? That's always the problem with Caitlin Clark games, too. They may be sold out.
I mean, that is the demand that she is under. Maybe you can still get some. They're a few hours away, but certainly a unique experience later today at the kids' camp. And one person who's familiar with how loud it can get on these days where we have a bunch of the adolescents and the youth in attendance is Chloe Peterson from Indy Star, who covers the Fever with us. She's on the Payless Liquors hotline. And Chloe, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing good. Getting ready to hear a bunch of kids scream two octaves higher than normal.
You know what though? I like the energy that those kids bring on days like those, Chloe. I've seen many of those games and attended many of those games, and there's a certain energy. Yeah, I know it's going to be loud and high pitched, but there's an energy there that you just can't get anywhere else.
Yeah, I agree. It's a different vibe, I would say.
So
you don't sound excited, Chloe.
This is how mellowed out she is. I bring the excitement for both of us, and honestly, I feel like Chloe keeps me from being unprofessional when we're on press row. Whenever I get a little too rowdy, I look over and I'm like, I probably should calm down when I'm having a good time. But Chloe, before I get to bugging you in person later today when we sit on press row together, I do want to ask you. You've been on this beat for a few years now, and you know this team, I think, better than anybody when it comes to the insight as far as availability with Caitlin Clark and all the things related to her health. What is the latest on her status? I know she's supposed to play today. What can you tell us about the process of getting to this point where now they feel comfortable putting her back out there?
Yeah, I think it's been a multi-week process. Obviously, she missed these 5 games with a groin injury, and that's, coming. I think she played 4 games after she missed 5 games with a quad strain, and then now she's missed 5 more games with a groin injury. So they're trying to be really cautious on making sure she kind of comes back slowly and comes back in a way that will make sure she will be healthy for the rest of the season, especially because, these 2 injuries she's had are both in her left leg, so they're very close to each other. They're obviously not related, but, kind of just close to each other. But they've come really slow in her recovery. Just she was out of practice for a few days, and then she started limited practice. She started in 3-on-3 and some other drills, and only started playing 5-on-5 on Monday during the Fever's season ticket holders practice. So it's kind of been a slow process in making sure that, she is able and healthy to, come back at full strength and hopefully not have another setback or, another injury, whether it be in her left muscle or kind of any other muscle.
So prior to this season, Chloe, Caitlin hadn't missed a game in her career since high school, I believe. So she played all of her college career with the Iowa Hawkeyes and never missed a game, and played her entire rookie season, which was an historic rookie season, didn't miss a game. So how has she spoken about just the mental toll of missing time like this, and how she's handled just a unique situation that perhaps she hasn't been through at this point in her career?
Yeah, she talked yesterday about it obviously being difficult on her mental health because, as you mentioned, this is the first time she's had a significant injury or really any injury in her career. But she also talked about this giving her, a different perspective on the game, like one she hasn't seen before. Like when she was out with the quad injury, the coaching staff tasked her with, watching the offense, seeing how often they come up with empty possessions. And she talked about how that kind of helped give her a different perspective in, what they should be doing and how she can see the floor when she's kind of injured and off the court the entire game versus kind of just in the middle of it. So she talked yesterday about, obviously this has been hard for her going through the rehab, kind of not being able to play after 5 straight years of playing with no injuries, but she really hopes this can give her that unique perspective, both with what they can do on the court and the perspective of, she has had these injuries before. Now, what can she do to continue to be healthy?
The last time she returned from injury after that quad injury, she went off. We expecting that today?
I don't know. She talks about she doesn't know how many minutes she's going to play today, and when she came back against Liberty, she was very clear on how she doesn't like minutes restrictions. But I'm not sure if her perspective has changed on that, because she mentioned she would only play, maybe upper 20s in minutes. So she might be on a little bit of a restriction today coming back, but I wouldn't be surprised if she kind of opened it up like she did against the Liberty when she came back last time.
So one I'm curious to see, or one lineup I'm curious to see, is when they play Aari McDonald and Caitlin Clark together. And I know you saw a glimpse of that through our practice earlier this week, Chloe, but what have those conversations been like about moving Caitlin a bit off ball and having her play alongside Aari McDonald, who we've seen has proven to be a very good addition to this Fever squad?
Yeah, a lot of people have been hating on moving Caitlin Clark off the ball, which I don't really understand, because I think it's a great way to keep Caitlin on the floor while also taking the pressure off of her. And that's really what Stephanie White is trying to do, because obviously Aari's going to be, or Caitlin's going to be, the main point guard still, and she's still going to, bring the ball up most of the time. But what they're trying to do with both Aari and Caitlin on the floor is, allow Aari to bring the ball up every so often and, take the pressure off Caitlin when defenders are double teaming her, guarding her 94 feet. And I think with the type of player that Aari is, she's very similar to Caitlin in the sense she can be quick. She can run a transition offense similar to Caitlin, which is, I think, the difference in, the success of being able to bring Caitlin off ball versus, having Sydney Colson or even last year Erica Wheeler bring the ball up the court in hopes of getting Caitlin some pressure taken off of her, because both Sydney Colson and Erica Wheeler kind of play a slower offense when they have the ball in their hands. So it kind of changed the scope of the game when they would be at point. But Aari McDonald plays a very similar fast game to Caitlin, and I think that will help them kind of smooth over the transition and be able to take some pressure off of Caitlin.
Chloe, what are you expecting to see from this offense today? They played so well, certainly on the road against Minnesota. They had a couple of really terrific games, lost a close one again to the Sparks. But how does Caitlin reintegrate into that offense? It's kind of been cooking right now.
Yeah, I think it'll be a lot of, transition offense like Caitlin likes to play. And I think it's really helped with, obviously, Aari going into that starting lineup and being able to play that, that same type of offense, because the first time when Caitlin was out back in early June, they had no transition points, I believe, for the first 3 games she was out, and that was a big problem for them with Caitlin out. But Aari has been able to kind of fill that gap in terms of pushing the pace and keeping it in transition. So I think, it will be a seamless transition, obviously, and Caitlin will continue to push the pace. And I think, obviously, they already lost to Golden State out in San Francisco this year, and they know that. They know they need to defend their home court, too.
I will say it was funny to see you all trying to have like a serious press conference with Stephanie White yesterday, and then Caitlin's in the back slinging the football around. And so I'm like, I think she's playing tomorrow. It's like, Stephanie White's giving the update on her status, and we'll see how she feels, and no setbacks. I'm like, she's back here, being Peyton Manning Jr. or whatever. So that was funny, Chloe. And on another funny note, we had a chance to see them. I know they drafted the players officially, her and Aficia Collier, as the All-Star team captains. They chose their teams, I believe, a couple of days ago, but it aired last night. And one of the twists was trading of the head coaches. You have Cheryl Reeve, who coaches the Minnesota Lynx, sticking with her Lynx captain in Nafisia Collier, and then Sandy Bordello will coach the Caitlin Clark-led team, Team Clark. So what was your reaction to that? And will we have to press Caitlin on this, later today? Because, I'll take one for the team, Chloe, and ask her, is there any love lost or is there no love lost for her and Cheryl Reeve right now?
Yeah, I wasn't surprised about that. As soon as they said, in the teaser that there was going to be a twist, I think I and a lot of fans and other people assumed it was going to be a coach swap. And I wouldn't be surprised if it was something that Nafisa kind of brought up, because obviously Cheryl Reeve is Nafisa's coach, and why wouldn't she want her to be her all-star coach too, both for winning purposes and for fun. It's her coach purposes. So I don't think there's any love lost between Caitlin and Cheryl, and I think it's just something fun to spice it up, because there obviously weren't any other all-star trades either between Caitlin and Nafisa.
I need Cheryl and Caitlin to just stand in front of each other at center court and give us like a WWE SmackDown, sort of hype.
You got
before
Mark's
the game.
attention. He stood up all of a sudden.
I need some of that, Chloe. So I'll work on that, and I'll let you ask the real question later today. How about that?
That sounds great.
All right. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate it, Chloe.
All right. Thank you.
You bet. You'll catch up with her later on today. Chloe Peterson covers the Fever for the Indy Star, and she certainly had a lot to write about the last year and a half.
Yes, always happy to have her join us on the Payless Liquors hotline. And yes, she has gone from, because she's an Iowa grad, covering Caitlin Clark in college, now covering her in the pros. And I think
she's becoming kind of the Brian Windhorst of the WNBA, right?
It's kind of ironic how it worked, because I don't even think, and actually I know Chloe is not even from Iowa. I believe she's from Wisconsin. She ended up going to Iowa for college, and lo and behold, you end up overlapping with one of the greatest athletes, at least attention-wise, probably of this generation. So it is, again, when I say that she's covered Caitlin Clark, she knows her probably better than anybody. I don't say that lightly. She has covered her for a number of years now, from the college to the pro level, and I'll see her later today when Caitlin's back in action. And as far as administrative restriction goes, Caitlin ain't trying to hear that. You know good and well, as soon as she gets out there, there's going to be some, hey, coach, I'm good. Let me play. And so I'm curious to see how much they restrict her, because she's a competitor, man. She's not going to want to come out the game.
It's the Fan Morning Show. James Boyd, Jeff Rickard, Mark Dykton, and we've been talking about the Fever. They play at noon today, 11:45, the Fan pregame show with Eddie Garrison. But if you're a Pacers fan, you don't have to wait too much longer for at least some Summer League action. You can see some of the young guys as they get going. Tomorrow at 2, they will take on, and it's very interesting that obviously different names, different players, different situation, but their first 2 games in Summer League, they play Cleveland tomorrow afternoon at 2, and then Saturday afternoon at 2:30, they play Oklahoma City.
So if they beat Oklahoma City without a player tearing his Achilles, then they deserve the ring.
That's a win.
Well, we need a recount, but no, it
and
should
then
be
they'll play the Knicks later on in their little schedule there too.
Yeah, I mean, look, I am the degenerate who always says, "Oh, it's Summer League," but I'll be watching. I want to see Johnny Furphy do his thing, as well as the rookies.
I fully expect them to be playing Sunday night at 7 p.m. in the championship game on the 20th too.
I'm with that.
Let's go. I like that. All right, that's what's happening as far as the Pacers are concerned, and the Fever coming up later on today. The one of the guy, we haven't talked that much about it. It really sounded, and I was over there with you watching and listening to Kevin Pritchard talk about the team. They really like the upside of Johnny Furphy. They think he's going to become a full-time rotational player soon. Did you get that? Did you get that vibe?
Yeah, I mean, there's still some gaps you kind of have to get through, or levels you have to get to, because if we're talking about him being a rotation player, we're also talking about Jarris Walker being a bigger rotation player, and obviously being Mathers in a rotation. But yeah, they believe in his upside, and why wouldn't you? He's a 6'8", a true 6'8" wing. He can shoot it. Shot it pretty well in college at Kansas. He's still the youngest Pacer on their roster. So when you put all that together, yes, I think that he should have, some exciting thoughts or being thrown his way. And so I just want to see how he looks in year 2, particularly in Summer League, because usually those guys who've been in the NBA for a full year look a step faster, more comfortable in that setting. And so if that is the case, I think that'll be something that we can look at and say, hey, he's moving in the right direction.
I'm looking forward to watching that tomorrow afternoon, see some of the kids, how they play.
Like I said, I'm always like, I'm not watching that. What's the big deal? It doesn't even matter. And then I'm glued to the TV. So
that's how that works. We got a golf tournament coming up that people can be a part of. And I want to make a correction. I said, Mark, a little while ago, did I say 93.3 FM when I was talking about WIBC HD2? It's 93.
Did.
It's 93.1.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you just call me an idiot right then and stop me?
yeah, nice. Idiot is a strong word. It's not nice.
I started thinking about
job.
that. I started thinking about that, and I'm like, I think I might have said the wrong frequency there. So
there
that's where I'm at today. I'm having a tough hump day today, James.
Well, we got to get it together, man. We're professionals.
That's right. But anyway, I want to get this golf tournament together. We're going to get spots starting to fill up now. You can be a part of it. Thursday, August the 7th, 10 a.m.
Make me laugh.
Get your Caddyshack on.
Like it's Ash Wednesday or something.
I know, man. I feel like I should be praying or repenting for something. But I'll let you continue, Jeff.
Danny's praying about certain things happening or not happening in that movie. But yeah, no, we're going to be out to Legends Golf Course August the 7th. It's all to benefit the Franciscan Foundation. They just do such a great job at Franciscan Health out there. We want to help out. We know you want to help out, making people's lives healthier and better all the time, especially within the community. Thursday, August the 7th, 10 a.m. Legends Golf Club, just south of town there. Get the clubs ready. Join us. We'll all be out there except for James, who's skipping out to go see the Baltimore Ravens that day.
Who play the Indianapolis Colts.
Oh, is that what it is? You're going to see the Colts,
that's
not
usually,
the Ravens.
when the job that keeps the lights on is the one I have to make sure I'm there for.
All right, we're going to have a lot of fun stuff going on. And in addition to just hanging out with us, some great prizes. I think we might have a set of golf clubs on the line there. And I know JMV is – we're working with one of JMV's friends and listeners, just have a portable basketball goal in the back of a pickup truck. Then maybe you can pay a few bucks, take some free throws, and win some prizes and donate to Franciscan. It's easy. Go to 1075thefan.com, register to get in that golf tournament today.
That's the most JMV thing ever, to have a basketball hoop at a golf course.
That's why we have to have it, honestly.
I love it.
That's why we have to have it. So you want to come?
No injuries. No injuries with that one,
no,
please.
We don't want to see any Achilles. It's just, we've talked about this before. It's just weird that you'd have 3 guys in the span of 12 months that would go down with Achilles injuries.
Yeah, and just hoping that is not the case going forward. But one thing that Kevin Pritchard did say, he said they're going to monitor a lot of those injuries a lot differently going forward. And I would highly, highly, highly doubt we see any Pacers play through calf strains for the foreseeable future, and honestly probably for the end of time because of what we see now with Halliburton. So it's an inflection point for the franchise, but overall he expects Ty to make a full recovery, and I would expect Ty to be ready to prove people wrong whenever he's back healthy again.
All right, let's check things down, get you caught up to date on everything you need to know as your day begins.
The Morning Checkdown on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
We will start on the hard court with things that are happening today. Regular season game involving Caitlin Clark returning from injury as they play.
She's going to be
there we go. James is actually air dribbling between his legs right now.
She's going to be ready to shoot, and shoot a lot better than my form was there for those who are watching on the YouTube stream. But yes, Caitlin Clark back in action in T-minus, 2.5 hours, basically?
Yeah, we're getting close, noon.
I'm excited to see her. And like I said, Caitlin Clark and minutes restrictions usually don't mix, but I'm curious to see how safe the Fever want to keep her.
Do we call this a bit of a revenge game after losing at Golden State a couple weeks ago?
Yeah, I mean, you can call it that. I think it's either revenge or something else has to fuel you, because at some point, those standings matter, and they don't care when you win them.
Let's just get it done. All right. That's what's happening on the court today. Meanwhile, Major League Baseball last night was not a good night for my Cincinnati Reds. And don't you wish Kevin was here to hammer him about that today?
Well, he has, I'm sure, the MLB app. He can see that they're losing.
Wow. Miami Marlins beat him 12-2 yesterday.
That was so cutthroat.
I was. I was just letting that breathe for a minute there.
Oh, I love it.
He gets an alert, and he's like, all right, I guess I'm going to dive in the pool a little longer. Do whatever. Need another bowl of ice cream.
Now that you're being so ruthless, how'd the Cubs do yesterday?
They lost. Like, no one's going 162-0. I keep telling you this.
All right. 8-1.
I didn't watch a single pitch, though.
That's Mark's baseball season analysis.
One of my favorite jokes, though, is when my favorite team starts 1-0, and I'm like, all right, 162-0, 82-0. I can't help it.
Who was your favorite team growing up?
Growing up, it was the White Sox.
Okay.
Yeah, Southside guy.
Right now, how you feeling about the Sox?
We don't talk about them on these airwaves.
Right,
They're not good. They're awful.
They lost to Toronto 6-1 yesterday. The Cardinals did win. They beat the Washington Nationals by a score 4-2. And the Indianapolis Indians won. They beat the Gwinnett Stripers over at Victory Field 8-1. They will also play this afternoon. That one begins at 1:35. You got lots of hooky options today.
There you go.
Lots of reasons to take the afternoon off. Mark, you should take the girls to an afternoon game today.
I want a nap at some point, though. We went to the Jurassic World movie last night. It was a late night.
Did they like it?
They liked it.
You got
I
a
liked
review
it. I
for
thought it
us?
was good. I went till like 11:15 though.
This is Scarlett Johansson's in that one, right?
Oh yes, she is. Yes, she is.
The most on-brand Mark response. But you know what? I feel
Daddy,
you, brother.
can I have some popcorn? Not right now. Not right now.
Well, my wife likes like a couple, like she likes Chris Pratt and stuff from the other ones. So I was like,
Yeah?
I like this one a lot. She's like, oh, I know why you liked it. I'm like, am I not allowed to? Yes, I like Scarlett Johansson.
You know what?
So sue me.
But she's not as pretty as you. Right?
That's how you got to save it, right? One real quick thing as far as the check down goes. This is just some Colts adjacent news. Caden Pierce, the younger brother of Alec Pierce, the Princeton basketball star, announced that he's gonna sit out this year at Princeton, finish up his degree, and then I believe he's going to transfer into the transfer portal. So he will be a very good player on the market when he gets there next year.
He can play, huh?
Yeah, he can play. He was like the Ivy League Player of the Year.
Nice.
And and helped them get to the NCAA tournament. I believe they went to the Sweet 16, if not last year, the year before. So he's a legit player. And I've joked with him and Caden because they had a camp a few years ago back in Illinois, kind of where I grew up. Actually, they're from Glen Ellen, Illinois, and all three brothers. Because Alec is the football player in his family, but his two brothers play basketball. His older brother played basketball professionally overseas, and his younger brother plays at Princeton. So I always joke with Alec that, you play football because your jumper is broke. So he'll admit that. He's also the fastest guy of his family. So
look,
it helps to play football in that regard.
It's crazy how many NFL players go, I could have played basketball. It's crazy how many of them think that.
I'm going to go around the locker room probably this year and get their real thoughts on this. Like, do you really think you can play professional basketball? Because that is and vice versa. Because I can't imagine
Do you think a well-built guy like LeBron would have been able to play in the National Football League?
Yeah, but I think that's LeBron. Like,
right. I mean, we're talking about one of the greatest athletes of all time, right?
But I'm like, most of them, when I hear him say that, I'm like, no, you would not last in the NBA, or vice versa. You would not last in the NFL. You chose the right sport because you're professional in that one.
I always admired the track guys going back to the day, like a Willie Gault, a Willie Anderson, guys that were just could fly, but said, you know what, I'm gonna play a rugged physical sport like football.
God bless them. And honestly, it just depends on how you view it. Obviously, more roster spots in the NFL, but
you got to be able to catch, though. Being fast is one thing, but you got to be able to catch.
And you got to be able to take a hit.
You got to be able to run routes, catch, take hits. Not a football guy, James?
Not at all. I never played football. My dad said he went to one practice in high school. He was a pretty fast, skinny guy like me. And
the guy that could beat up Ronda Rousey?
Yeah, the guy who could beat up Ronda Rousey, or so he says. He said he got hit over the middle. And he got up and he took his helmet off and started walking towards the locker room.
That was that.
And the coach told him, if you leave, you're off the team. And he told him, I ain't coming back. And so he hadn't been back since. So my dad's football career lasted only a couple of practices.
Probably smarter than the rest of us.
That's exactly why I'm carrying a laptop to football games instead of a helmet.
All right. Coming up in a moment, we will continue our look around what's happening in Indianapolis sports. Ben Steele covers men's basketball at Marquette in Milwaukee. And I believe the Indiana Pacers just drafted a young man from Milwaukee's Marquette.
Exactly. So we'll get his thoughts on Kam Jones here in a bit.
All right. That's next. 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
You're listening to the Fan Morning Show on Sports Radio 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Good morning and welcome into the Fan Morning Show. James Boyd is here as always. Kevin Bowen is out on vacation today. I'm Jeff Rickard. Mark Dykton spinning the tunes over there across the way and making the show go. We appreciate that. In the meantime, we've been talking basketball all day long, both Fever and Pacers, and now it's time to check in with Ben Steele, who covers men's basketball for the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel when it comes to Marquette. And, of course, in the recent draft, Kam Jones being selected in the second round by the Indiana Pacers, and I think that's a young man with a lot of upside, and we thought we'd find out a little bit more about him. So we check in with Ben now on the Payless Liquors hotline. Good morning, Mr. Steele. How are you doing today?
What's up, guys? Appreciate you having me on today.
Yeah, appreciate you being here and getting up in the morning and spending time with us. What's the one thing we know he can play. It's why he get drafted in the NBA, but what do we need to know about Kam Jones?
He's super crafty. That's a word that I always bring up when I talk about Kam Jones. It's an interesting guy, fun guy. I think Pacers fans are really going to like him. I know he's been bothered by a little hamstring injury here recently, but if you get the full Kam Jones experience in summer league, people are really going to like him, man. He's just a hooper, man. He's a baller. Not super athletic, but he's super crafty. Gets his shot off. Pacers fans are going to love him.
So, Ben, throughout my research when we were trying to get you on the show, I was stalking your Twitter, and I found a tweet that you had back in March 2025. And this was March 14th. You said Kam Jones is his own one-man Broadway show. Can you expand on that for our listeners?
Well, if my math is correct, in March, he must have been at the Big East tournament at Madison Square Garden. So he was putting on a show. No, he's super fun to watch. Really interesting about him. He's not a super great athlete as far as like running and jumping is concerned, like the natural athlete.
Mm-hmm.
But like I mentioned, he's super crafty. Like the most interesting thing about him is like he's always been this way. When he was a kid, he was always super skilled. I remember his dad telling me Kam was always skilled as a kid, but they realized he was never going to be like that blazing athlete just to blow by guys. So they worked constantly when he was a kid on just like his angles and his footwork and his jabs and his pump fakes, all that crafty stuff. So you see that when he scores around the rim, like he could do that, but he's always been that way. He's very creative when he gets in the paint. His creativity is what astounds you. And I think that's the show he always puts on is that creativity.
Ben, did I read correctly when he was a kid that he was a boxer?
I think he got more into that when he was at college here at Marquette. He's a left-handed boxer. There's a local community boxing gym that he joined up. Marquette has like a team. It's not like a intercollegiate sport, but it's like a club boxing team, and Kam frequently trained with them. And it's not surprising the stuff that we've talked about, like the footwork and everything, that translates over to the boxing realm, right? So he's always been into that. I know he got into that. It was kind of like his refuge away from basketball during his time at Marquette. He said after he gets done playing basketball, he wants to maybe do some professional bouts. I don't know if I would advise him to do so, but he seems to enjoy it a lot.
I'll make sure I tell him that, Ben, and kind of run that by him and see how he feels. But on a more serious note, I know you covered his entire career at Marquette, and he was a 4-year player for that program, and he went from being, a guy who early on got some minutes and certainly played, but would turn into be a 3-year starter. What was it like to see him go through that process of becoming, quote unquote, the guy, and also learning, or maybe not, learning how to be a point guard, because he transitioned from being off the ball to more on the ball, I believe, for his final season?
Yeah, that was super interesting, like his whole trajectory. It's rare these days, right, first and foremost, just to see a guy go from a super skinny freshman into like, a second team All-American as a senior. It's definitely old school the way that Shaka Smart at Marquette runs his program. He likes to develop guys, and Kam's like a perfect example of that. Like, he played with Tyler Kolek for 3 seasons. Kolek now with the New York Knicks. He was an All-American too as a point guard. So Kam wasn't getting like the on the ball reps. He was more like a spot up guy, that second side action. He would get like the ball when Tyler would run a pick and roll on the other side. But then, you know, it's super interesting. Like at the end of Cam's junior year, Tyler got hurt. He missed 6 games at the end of the regular season and the whole Big East tournament with a abdominal injury. And Marquette didn't really have a backup point guard. The point guard who was the backup blew out his ACL. So Cam had to take over as the backup guy. And you could tell, like, there was something there. Like, he knew how to do it. I remember he had a 30.9 assist game when Tyler was out against Xavier on the road at the end of the season. So, you know, Marquette loses Tyler Kolek after that season. People wondering, you know, is this the time where Shaka Smart goes in the transfer portal to get a point guard? But they knew from that 6-game sample size that Kam Jones could do that. And then, admittedly, I was pretty skeptical. I had just known Cam as like a bucket getter type of guy. But you look at his senior year numbers, I mean, yeah, I think he had 200 assists and 63 turnovers. So I'm looking at the numbers right now. And, you know, that assist-to-turnover ratio was like one of the best in the nation. And what was really cool to me to see was that creativity that he had as a scorer. You could see that as a passer as well. Just the reads he would make, the cross-court passes, one-handed, you know, cross-court slingshot passes. That creativity extended over to the passing, which was really cool to see.
Ben Still, the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, covers Marquette's men's basketball team, joining us on the Payless Liquors hotline this morning. I was introduced to this kid, really, for me, when Marquette made their run to the Sweet 16 2 seasons ago, and I thought, this guy's pretty good. And then you watch him a little bit more this past year. He's a consensus second-team All-American. He averaged almost 20 points a game. We know he was on an all-Big East team. Are you kind of surprised in some ways that he lasted until 38?
Yeah, I think most of the last couple years, I thought he had been trending more to like a into the first round type of guy. I think, you know, that lack of athleticism, I think people kind of see that and maybe wonder how that translates to the NBA. Obviously, you're playing against super skilled, super athletes. Everything's like ramped up speed wise. So I think there was some skepticism there, but like I said, like he's always figured out just ways to score. I remember him, you know, scoring buckets against, you know, 7'4" Zach Edey in college and 7'1" Donovan Clingan, just getting those shots off in the paint against those type of guys. So I think, like, if there's one guy who can overcome like that lack of athleticism, I think that's Cam. But I think that's one of the reasons why he kind of slipped a little bit.
Ben, I tell you what, if I scored over Zach Edey or Donovan Clingan, I would talk so crazy. That's probably why God didn't give me that talent, because I would not be as humble as Kam Jones. From a mentality standpoint, I know we've talked a lot about his on-court ability, but just his demeanor, how would you describe him as a person? I know you don't know him like on a super personal level because you have to, you know, keep it professional. But from the guy you saw from, you know, freshman year to the guy you saw his senior year, what can you tell us about the man behind the player?
Yeah, obviously a guy, he's super confident in his skills. I remember as a freshman, like he wasn't afraid to, like, you know, pull up from 35 feet or, like I said, take the ball against, you know, a 7-footer in the paint. He was never afraid on the basketball court. That's one thing on the court that stands out about him. Off the court, he's super fun guy. He had a podcast here at Marquette with his teammate Stevie Mitchell. You can ask him about that if you ever have him on the show. He's just a fun-loving guy, kind of a quirky character. He just likes to tell a lot of jokes. He was into fashion a little bit. If you see him, like, go back and look at all his outfits that he wore to like Big East Media Day, he was into that sort of thing. So, yeah, he's really like a sweet kid, super, you know, super confident in his abilities, but he also likes to have fun a little bit. And yeah, he's a good kid, man. Good kid.
Well, thanks for stopping by and joining us this morning, Ben. We appreciate your time. We're looking forward to it. Hey, one more quick question. I know it's not your beat. I don't even know if you pay that close attention to it. Any vibes on how Milwaukee Bucks fans are feeling about picking up Miles Turner from the Pacers this last week?
I mean, people are, well, the first and foremost, people were just shocked because nobody saw that one coming. And it's a credit to the Bucks front office for having the gall and the creativity to, waive Damian Lillard. I'm sure that's not a decision that went, they took that lightly or anything, but that was the only way that they would create enough space to make a move like that. So I think people were initially shocked, and I think people have talked themselves into it. They see Miles Turner as kind of a younger, more mobile version of Brook Lopez, which is kind of what the Bucks have needed the last couple of years. Their roster has gotten old and slow a little bit. I'm sure as people in Indianapolis know from the last couple of playoff battles, but I think people are excited just from the shock of it all that no one saw that coming. But I think they're starting to talk themselves into it basketball-wise.
Sounds good. Hey, thanks for stopping by, Ben. We'll talk to you soon.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
You bet. Ben Still from the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. Nice to get his perspective on a guy who's covered Marquette and Kam Jones for a while now.
Yeah, I thought it was great that you asked him about the Miles Turner signing as well, because he does live in Milwaukee, I would assume, or at least in that area. He's able to give us a little bit of insight there as well. And the word shock came up a couple of times, and I think that's on both sides when it comes to the Milwaukee fan base and the Pacers fan base. So we'll see more from there. But getting back to Kam Jones, he has a podcast, apparently. So I've done some digging when Ben was speaking with us.
Does it rival the James Boyd podcast?
It might. I think he probably has a bigger following. That tends to happen when you're an athlete and you're very talented at what you do. So I'm curious to get to know Kam a little bit, and I will definitely follow up with him about the podcast he has and, why he even did it. I'm looking at his Instagram page. His name on Instagram, Bucket Fam Cam. I trust him.
All right.
I feel like he's going to be good. That's a pretty solid name right there.
And we will not be able to see him in summer league, correct?
Well, I think they're playing it by ear. They have a few games out there in Vegas, and they were telling us he's dealing with some hamstring tightness. So, if he didn't play today, I wouldn't be surprised. But I would imagine they want to try to get him out there in some capacity before the season starts. But it isn't a situation where you have to get him out there because you want to make sure he's healthy.
All right. I need a number between 1 and 8, James Boyd.
You know me. I'll go 2. It's a compromise between you and Mark.
It's
I'll go
1 and 2. It's always 1 or 2.
I'll go 2.
Mark Dykton, I'm looking for the second caller at 239-1070 for a pair of tickets to go see the Indy 11 this weekend. Or do you have two
We've
pairs?
got two pairs, so
how about 1 and 2?
Okay.
How about 1 and 2? You were going to say 2 and 3 and get.
I was
going to
say 2 and 3. I was going to be generous with myself.
Nah, skip that. We like winners around here. 1 and 2, baby.
Okay.
Fast fingers. 239-1070.
That's how it works. We'll finish up strong, let you know about that, and get you ready to go for a game midday today downtown. A couple of games downtown today. We'll tell you about it next. 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
You're listening to the Fan Morning Show on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Just thinking about you this morning, JB. Actually ate some breakfast, knowing there would be no cluster truck delivery today. Look at you. You got him up and dancing out of the chair right there, man. He's not even listening to the show right now. He's just tuned out.
I heard
grooving.
you. You were telling me about your, what was it, breakfast, sleep.
You think that I never eat.
Well, you do need to eat. I want to make sure you eat some food, get some energy, and then you get some food in you.
Need some sustenance,
right.
Jeff.
By tomorrow, you'll be swinging your hips like me.
I came home yesterday. There was homemade cornbread that my aunt had made, so I had to jump on that, man.
There you go.
Said that, an apple and a protein bar for breakfast with some coffee this morning. There you go.
Mark,
so see, I do eat.
I'm just letting you know, man.
All right. And I eat more than just, I like to go down to Harry Nizzy's once a month and have my sliders.
Oh, we know that.
Jeff just called us broke, Mark.
My wallet still hasn't recovered.
You guys need to go with me. It's not that expensive. I'm telling you. It's not a bad deal over there, man.
My daughter's like, are we having dinner tonight? Like, sorry. Jeff's lunch is still not paid off.
Yep.
There's some saltine crackers.
I'm telling you, man. Every now and then, I'm just like, man, I might have to pack a bag, just in case, I come home and I'm evicted, and Mark, I gotta take the couch.
Do we have winners, Mark Dankton?
Yeah, shout out to Brody and Daniel, both headed to the Indy 11 game against Rhode Island this Saturday night. So we'll have a pair of tickets tomorrow and a pair of tickets a Friday as well. So if you want your chance to go, then make sure you're listening.
What kind of mischief did you get up to as a youth? Anything crazy like pranks in the community, things like that?
Yes, I don't want.
I bring this up for a reason, but tell me.
As a youth.
As a ute.
Okay.
All right. This is caught on camera. A couple of kids, apparently, that appear to be teenagers in a little town in Pennsylvania, just stole the Ronald McDonald statue from the town's only McDonald's. And my thought is, okay, great. What do you do now with the Ronald McDonald statue once you have it in your possession?
You put it in the woods and you let some poor hiker find it.
I mean, does it show up at a party? Do you have him? What do you do with the Ronald McDonald once you have that there, man?
That is so bizarre. I have no idea what you do.
It's a crazy thing. Now, ironically, there is a listing on eBay for a Ronald McDonald somewhere in Pennsylvania, too. I don't know if these are the brightest folks in the world. So
I will say, if you got money like that, buy tickets to go see the Fever
It just came across
today.
the wire, so I thought I'd throw that out there.
That's funny.
It's crazy. Do you remember Bob's Big Boy? Azar's Big Boy? Do you ever see those?
I have no idea what you're referencing right now. I will Google it.
You know what I'm talking about, don't you, Mark?
Yeah, they're in like Ohio.
There's Azars, there's Frisch's, there's a few of them around, but they used to have this huge, kind of like chubby little big statue holding a big hamburger outside.
Yeah, he's in the Austin Powers
there.
movies.
Oh, I'm looking at it now. Okay.
Yeah, you never seen that guy anywhere? They're few and far between now. I don't even know if there's that many of them open anymore. But I've heard of one of those being kidnapped before. I remember that many years ago.
How on earth?
Like, what do you do with it, though? I mean, you can't show it off. You can't put it in your front yard or anything.
I have no idea. I don't know what you would do.
For the thrill.
Yeah.
Coincidentally, an identical statue of Ronald is being sold on eBay for $2,500 with a pickup location listed in Langhorne, Pennsylvania, which happens to be just an hour outside of the town from which it was stolen, Nesconing. So there you go.
I'm trying to bid on it now.
You're looking for bid $2 on that.
We need a show mascot, so Peacock is out and Ronald McDonald is in.
Man, oh man, oh man. I know you're looking forward to going to the Fever game this afternoon, right, at noon?
Yes, I'll be over there, like I said, bugging my friend Chloe Peterson, who covers the Fever for Indy Star, as well as getting the latest on Caitlin Clark so we can talk about it on these airwaves tomorrow. It is a big game, nonetheless, because as we talked about earlier throughout the show, the seeding, I'm starting to look more and more at it each and every day, and these wins are really going to matter. Not that all of them don't matter, but we can no longer use the, it's early excuse. No. This season is almost at the midway point, so you want to see the Fever catching some stride, and obviously you want to see Caitlin Clark being healthy to help them catch that stride.
Look, still fairly early in the season. We're about a third of the way through, but you need to start thinking about these games because at 9-9, they're equal with Golden State. Golden State is listed at 6th, the Fever 7th in the league right now. And there's a little bit of a gap between number 6 and number 5. I mean, Seattle's the next team to catch. They're 12-7, so you need to start making some inroads here.
Yes, and I believe the top 8 teams make the playoffs in the WNBA, so you definitely want to start stacking some wins here.
Yeah, that's what you have to do, and that's coming your way at noon. If you can't skip work and get out to that, you can certainly Listen to it here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. That one will come your way with the Fan pregame show and Eddie Garrison starting at 11:45 this morning. So if I know that you ever take your, you can, I don't know, take your radio, see if it matches up live. And I don't know if we put those on delay or not. I got to check. But sometimes I think when they make us put it on delay. It's always been one of my grievances. Live sports, we should just play live.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Take your radio and watch it as it happens. All right, Mark, anything else you want to throw in before we head to the rest of the day here?
Well, you said it's raining outside right now, so I was going to mow the lawn. I think that's going to have to take a later note for that.
It looks like, and also today, I think a 1:35 start for the Indians over at Victory Field. It looks like they might have a window of dryness to play that, so should be okay.
If you're downtown and you see me, say what's up.
All right, have a great day. It'll be Jake coming your way. Well, not today. It'll be the best.